Yo, what is going on, Papa Fam? Welcome back to episode 16 of Coding the Right Way with AI, the series where we're going to dive into all kinds of cool AI concepts, ways to use AI in the dev world, and just everything that you need to know to get ahead of the rest in this AI ever-evolving, magically evolving space right now. It's absolutely growing so quick. Today we're building an Airtable clone, and trust me when I say this one is clean as hell. So get excited. Let me know where you're watching from right now. Go ahead and smash the like button, and let's go ahead and dive into a demo. And I built the entire app, so you guys are going to get the entire code base right now, and then we're going to dive into some concept building very, very shortly afterwards. So go ahead, smash that like button. Let me know where you're watching from, and here we go right now. Guys, check it out. We have Basecraft, right? So I wasn't sure with the name right now, but here we go. Like you got the demo, and the demo is so clean. It's one of my cleanest finishes for an app, I'd say, right? So in this case, we have the beautiful Airtable design, right? So any of you are new to what Airtable is, effectively, think about it in a very simple way. You've got like Excel tables, right? So you've got effectively, you can store numbers, different types of data inside of there. And then you've got forms that push data into the Airtable, right? So sounds simple, right? But how do you do it correctly? How do you do it with multiplayer? And then how do you layer on things like AI agents in the mix as well? We're going to do so many cool things inside of this. And also we're going to add billing. We're going to add enterprise. We're going to have basically the ability to invite members, actually do multiplayer with them in the same table. Everything is customizable. It's absolutely insane, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. You can see here, we've actually got our own custom forms. You can see we've all got all the analytics around who opened the form, where they came from, all of that good stuff. And then of course, we even have AI in the mix, right? So we have an agent in flow, right? Now, what I really like with this one is we went ahead and created a demo workspace, right? So if I go ahead and click the demo workspace, you can see for yourself, this is clean as hell, guys. Right, so go ahead, look at this. Oh, I love the comments right now. I see you guys. We got Tatiana, I see you. We got Venya, he says, Jobbit, nice. Safa goes, do you ever think of giving up coding? No way, dude. It's the funnest time right now to be coding, okay? So trust me when I say that, just lock in and get with this, right? I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger because that way it should be easy to see. But you guys can see right here, we've got different table views. So in this case, we've got all of our different tables. We've got the actual form that plugs into a table. We can customize everything, guys. Right, so you guys can see right here, we can go ahead, we can actually customize where we put it. Why have I got it right now in a different view? But in this case, we can actually customize, we can actually change the order of things. We can go ahead and do everything. It's fully responsive. And then of course, if you copy the link, send that out, you can then preview the exact link that people will be seeing, right? Even if we go over to analytics, you can see all of the analytics around how that form is performing, okay? Now, of course, this is going to be billing. There's going to be billing enabled with this one, and that is thanks to our friends over at Clerk, and we're going to be using the Clerk CLI. If you haven't heard of Clerk before, they're absolute G's in the space, absolutely amazing, right? They got authentication absolutely handled for you guys, and the agent is going to set everything up for you, and they also have billing nailed down. I always get the question, Sonny, why do you push Clerk so much? Guys, because Clerk just makes so much sense. Why am I going to rebuild authentication? Why am I going to rebuild billing? All of these things when I already want to build a really, really powerful, cool app. Use Clerk, get it to handle everything for you, and then focus on building a very, very powerful app. And in this case, we're going to dive into this CLI, and this is going to be exactly how our agent can go ahead and actually power everything up for us. We're also going to dive into Vercel Eve, which is the framework for building agents, and that is absolutely super powerful. Let me go ahead and drop the music a bit, and you can actually see right here, we've got different plans like I mentioned before, and one of which includes AI access, okay? So we're going to basically show you how to gate today as well, but let's go ahead and give you a live demo, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and sign in, or you can create a workspace. In this case, I'm going to sign into an account, so I'm going to go ahead and continue, and also, you just see how custom everything is? Super nice, super clean. Let's go ahead and log into an account right now. So I'm going to log into my account. This is obviously using Clerk under the hood for the authentication. And then look at this, guys. Look how clean that is, right? So I've already created a workspace. In this case, that Sunny's Papa Fam is active. I can compare plans, or I can open the workspace. I'm going to open up the workspace, and already we have a very, very clean UI looking setup right here, right? So in this case, firstly, look at this. Look, search workspace, Command K. We have all of these kind of interactions, shortcuts. It's absolutely there. Right, if I go ahead and say, for example, like product, you can see I already get my bases. This is really nice search, okay? And then we've got our actual base. And I think a base is like the tables, effectively, right? We've got our recent interactions. So let's go ahead and open up product operations, right? So inside of here, we can have different tables, we can have forms, and then of course we have form analytics. So in this case, these are the form submissions, right? I've got one minor little tweak there that I needed to do. But in this case, you can see, look, we've got all kinds of different types of information that are supported, select statements. We've got even, just like ticks. You see every time I interact with it as well, real-time updating. Okay, we even have, nice little date pickers. We have file uploading as well. And as well as this, we've also got the ability to customize everything that you see right here. On top of that, we've got grouping, sorting, filtering, everything in the mix. And I'm going to give you all of this code for absolutely free at the beginning of this build right here, right? Jay just messaged me saying, this is better than Airtable. And as you can see here, this is actually real-time multiplayer, okay? So you can actually invite people to your base, and then you can go ahead and actually get them to work with you alongside everything. And then look at this, we can actually go ahead and resize. I can grab it and I can rearrange it. And this is saving in real time. Right, so this is actually saving. We can see our columns over here. I can say show in this view, or I can hide certain columns, and then we can save the settings. It's absolutely crazy what we can do here, including the ordering. Oh, it's just, I'm so proud of this one, right? And even then we've got different views. So look, we've got calendar view, we've got a Kanban view. So if I go into my Kanban view, check this out, guys, right? So a full Kanban view right now as well. So we can go ahead and move things around. Everything works. We can go ahead and modify it. We can click into it. Nice little pull out over there. And then if I was to create a new view that doesn't exist yet, I can go ahead and say, for example, calendar. Let's go ahead and select calendar view. Let's choose the date range, received, open calendar as month or agenda. Let's do month right now. Create that. And as you can see, boom, now we have a calendar view as well. This is crazy, right? This is really, really slick, really, really clean. Right now, nothing has dates. So let's go ahead and put a date inside of there. Let's just pop that one in. Let's go ahead and put something like this in. And then let's go back to calendar view, and we should be able to see, look, there you go. Bang. We've got the two ones with the dates now. Absolutely amazing, amazing stuff, right? Convex is powering this behind the scenes. We have got Convex in the mix. And then, of course, how do I get data inside of this, right? So if I want to push data inside of here, how do I do that? Okay, so in this case, we go over to forms, and I've actually got a created form that I've done already, product feedback. So in this case, we can see it's got a 0.7 response rate. We can see the analytics. We can click into it. So let's go ahead and jump into this. And if we go ahead and make this a bit smaller, so you can see really, really nice design. That bothers me so much. I should have centered it, but we can fix that. You can see here, we can go ahead and customize everything that you see here, right? So like mobile, desktop. And in this case, if I wanted to, for example, customize this one right here, look, firstly, you can tell exactly what fields map to what. So if I was to change, for example, what kind of feedback is this? Oh, this should tell us more, right? I can go ahead and say save answers in, and then you can see I can actually go ahead and choose which ones are supported. And then I can say how this column is filled, ask on the form, or set automatically and hide. So sometimes you can have hidden forms as well. You can also go ahead and change it. So tell us more. You see, little tiny tweak there. Review and publish, save changes. Let's do a description. What are you trying to accomplish and what gets in the way? Say if I want to make it a little bit more, like energetic, we can do that as well. Show this question only when conditions match as well. Look at this, guys. You can go ahead and actually have conditions based on the previous things as well, right? So absolutely crazy build. Start with an answer filled in, right? So that could be really handy if you're, for example, sending a specific type of form that's already pre-built and so forth, okay? And then, of course, if we go ahead, let me go and do a quick little reload right here. And let's just see one thing I just realized is my agent is still running, I believe, on my other channel. No, he stopped. Okay, I was going to say, I was wondering because something just happened. Right, so here you can also customize the style. You can see that we've got the open layout, we've got a card layout, we've got all of the form heading description, logo as well. Let's go ahead and get a logo right now. So I'm just going to grab a logo for a sec. I'm going to pop my logo in. Let's go ahead and upload that. And also let's do a cover image as well. So I'm going to do a profile picture. You guys will see this in just a moment. If I go to, for example, profile picture, that's going to be a bit weird, but I'll do that. Let's see how it goes. And now if we go back to the build, check this out. Look, yeah. So the profile picture is a bit strange here, but you guys can see I've got my logo, profile picture, boom. This is really, really nice. Say if I want to remove the profile picture, and then let's just change the accent color to that. So that's looking a lot cleaner. Page background, we can also go ahead and give it a bit more of a background. And then there we go, we have it, right? I'm pretty happy with that. Review and publish. I can see the different changes, publish that change. And now if I go to open that link, we have the form, it's loading it out. And let's see, bam. Right? Amazing stuff. Summarize your feedback, 1, 2, 3, feedback. Let's go ahead and do, for example, let's just write test. What kind of feedback is this? Let's do a feature request, right? Let's just do s@gmail.com, grid, and then let's go ahead and do, for example, urgent, and then we don't want to do this. And look at this, guys. We have Cloudflare, right? This is actually making sure that because this is an anonymous form, it's actually using something called turnstile, which actually goes ahead and makes sure that we don't get bots going crazy pushing this one, right? Interestingly, it didn't submit this one. I think I actually stopped it running the backend. But in this case, yeah, you can go ahead and save it and it'll publish into the actual table view itself, right? So in this case, once we publish that, we will see it inside of here, okay? So that's the first thing. And now, of course, if I want to find out some information about the AI, now I always get the demo gods against me here, but hopefully it's going to be a smooth one. But in this case, let's go ahead and say summarize this table and flag missing data. Okay. So in this case, yeah, I've been debugging a little situation over here, but as you can see, it's going to use a tool. But the good news is, because I'm using Vercel Eve here, it's actually self-healing, right? So in this case, it's going to retry in different approaches every time it does a tool call. And you can see right here, guys, this is damn cool, right? So let it finish this answer and then I'll show you what we just did. Okay, so in this case, this agent, firstly, we have quotas, right? So in this case, there's a full quota here. Now, if we go up here, you can see, look, the first tool call was reviewed the table structure. It found that there were 6 records, 9 columns. Okay, so it got that information and then it analyzed the table. And then it found out what it needed to. Oh, I forgot. I knew I had this on the list to support Markdown. So this is a very simple fix, the Markdown. And then it gives us a nice breakdown of everything. It gives us an interpretation and it gives us a limitation of what it could achieve based on the tools that it had. Okay. So obviously with Markdown support, this will be bolded, right? So these little things will be bolded, but I'll push this update to the GitHub repo, okay? But in this case, you can see we have a full agent, okay? This is absolutely awesome. Now, let's say I want to invite someone to my workspace. I go over to my actual settings. So let's go back over to here, and then I go to manage, and now I can go to members, and I can actually invite members. So if I go here, and I, for example, want to invite j4399@gmail.com, he won't actually be able to join because I haven't deployed. But in this case, if I go to, for example, add him as an admin, send the invitation. Now Jay's got our entire invite flow sent to him, managed, everything is done for us, right? So this is the really powerful thing about Clerk, and this is what's awesome. So now he can sign in and he will have full access to this entire organization. That is absolutely awesome, okay? Now, what we're going to focus on today is not rebuilding this entire app. Instead, I'm going to do something slightly different, which I think has been the much, much better way of handling these streams lately. First up, you get the entire code base for free, right? So straight off the bat, you get the entire Airtable Clone demo, which we've decided to call Basecraft. If there is someone called Basecraft, no copyright, guys. I'll change it. It's happy to change it, right? But go ahead and feel free to git clone this repo. And I've got an entire massive instruction breakdown of all the features, how to go ahead and set things up. And this is how you can get the build that I just demoed. So that's the first thing that I really want to make clear, okay? You can go ahead and literally take the entire build that I just showed you right now and go ahead and use this for educational purposes, okay? So you guys can feel free to grab that right now. The thing that I want to focus on today instead is the individual certain parts of this, right? So these builds now are going a slightly different way where I want to focus on a few key aspects of a build like this. So firstly, it's cool to see a build like this because these are full builds. These are awesome, massive, massive builds. And instead of just rebuilding it from scratch, which anyone can really go ahead and not do to the same quality, but anyone's gonna assume that they can go ahead and run into this. Instead, I want to show you what you should be focusing on and how I believe you can get the most value out of streams like this. So the first thing is, how the hell do you even begin to have something like this, right? Where do you even begin when you want to build some kind of table format, when you want to go ahead and have this be real, like real-time multiplayer, you know, have the entire thing be real-time saving. And then, for example, agents, like how does an agent connect to this information? How do we pull this information into our agent? How does any of that happen? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do Vercel Eve. And then, of course, we have multi-tenancy, okay? So this right here is what we typically refer to as B2B, okay? So B2B is effectively when you have organizations. So think about Slack, right? So Slack can have multiple, people can be in multiple teams on Slack. And then the team itself only pays for one billing subscription. It could be Pro, it could be Starter, it could be anything. Now, every member inside of that team can go ahead and then get access to the perks of that subscription. So we're going to go ahead and do that today. And there's also things to consider here. It's not as simple as just saying build a B2B app. No, we have to do things, for example, making sure that this data isn't available or isn't, someone can't just come in and basically look at another organization's data. We have to protect those things. So I'm basically going to cover things like tenant isolation today, right? And how you can isolate in the database, right? So how are we going to go ahead and do this? Now, speaking of database, our database of choice today is going to be Convex, right? So we're going to use Convex for our database, cloud functions, all that stuff. For the actual authentication and the billing side of things, we're going to use auth, and billing is going to be clerk today. And then, of course, everything under the hood right here, we have Next.js, we have Tailwind, we have shadcn, we have a bunch of cool stuff, including Cloudflare and a bunch of those things. If you want the full list, you can simply go over to the Airtable clone, scroll down, and I have actually listed everything out inside of, I believe it's tech stack. So technical foundations, if you type in technical foundations, you can see that Next.js 16, we have correct clerk and Convex, and then we have the tenant boundaries. This is what I was saying before, making sure that there's no crossover between the data. And then we have a few extra deep dives over here, right? And this is the plans that we're going to go ahead and implement. Remember what I talked about before? You can go ahead and actually have things like a set price, which is basically monthly, annual, included number of members, and then additional seat price per member. So if we jump into clerk right now, I'll go ahead and show you guys. If we go over to clerk, and let's go into the dashboard. In fact, let's just dive into the build right now, okay? So what I want to do right now is go ahead, and if you sign up to Clerk in the first link in the description, you actually go ahead and sign up and create an account for absolutely free, okay? So the first thing I want you to do, sign up to an account using the first link in the description. It's absolutely free, like I mentioned. You come in here, and you're not going to see this. You're going to actually see a create application screen. So at this point, this is what we're actually going to start from, because the guys over at Clerk took our feedback super serious, and they're basically going ahead and making this entire process so much slicker. So we're going to call this one, give me a name, guys, for Airtable. Let's go ahead and give me some kind of, let's call it, I'm going to read the comments while you guys give me a name for this, right? Because I want a good name here. So let me know a name for this, and I'm going to read the comments in the meantime, right? We've got, let's go ahead and see, and guys, remember, throughout this build, ask me questions, okay? So awesome, forgot to mention Convex. Yeah, absolutely. We've got, clean as hell. It's definitely huge on this one. WD Soft says, cool, I prefer making things like billing and authentication myself. Guys, trust me when I say it's not worth doing the authentication and billing from scratch yourself, because quite honestly, if you screw up one thing, it can be an absolute disaster, okay? So I would always say, no one's going to celebrate for you if you get authentication or you manage to get billing right. That's the truth. No one's going to celebrate that. They're going to celebrate you having an awesome, badass product. So focus your time there instead of rebuilding a ton of things from scratch and then building a crap product anyway that no one's going to use. Okay? So we've got Pop-Up Airtable, Smart Table. Come on, guys. I know we can do better than this. We've got Land Table. You guys are original. Let's go ahead and give it Sorted Table. Come on, guys. I want some kind of like airy or like airy table, sorted table. Let's just call it, we've got Basecraft right now. I'm going to write Basecraft for now. Let's just call it Basecraft. I'm going to call it Basecraft because the names right now are not hitting, okay? But I appreciate all the suggestions. We're going to call it Basecraft Demo. You can call it whatever you want, right? Now, of course, here, Clerk is so easy. You just literally go ahead. Agent Base is cool. No, we can't use Agent Base. That actually belongs to someone. So first thing you want to do is actually go ahead and toggle all the different authentication methods you support. So we're happy to do all of, in this case, we'll start with Google and email. Then I actually want to toggle B2B organization, right? So this is very important. This is how we can get the custom roles and permissions. This is basically around how we can get the organizations, like I mentioned, you can have a team with multiple members, and all of those members can have certain roles and permissions. For example, admins can only see the billing stuff. Members of the team shouldn't be able to change the subscription and so forth, okay? So, and again, with the invitation flows, emails, automatic invites, and all that good stuff. So we're going to create the application now with that. And then, once we're done with that, we have a very nice next starting point. So what we want to do is actually go ahead and, what was it? We have a copy prompt here, but they actually did add in a very, very nice starter last time. But I'm wondering if we could use right now, but, there used to be a very nice prompt, but I think we can just use this one for now, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install it into Next.js. So couple of ways we can do this. Firstly, we need to create a Next.js app. Okay, so we're going to copy this right now. We're not going to call it this one, clerk Next.js. We're going to say pm create next app, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my own part here. So you can use any terminal you want. I'm going to use a normal terminal here. I'm going to cd into my documents, and then I like to go into my build folder. Okay, now you can do this however you want, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say pm create next app, and then I need to give it a name, right? And I also like to do at latest, and then we're going to go ahead and say basecraft YouTube demo. Okay, and we're going to hit enter, and then we get asked for settings. So in this case, I'm going to say no customize, TypeScript, ESLint, React compiler, yes, no, AppRouter, yes, no, agent MD, yes. Okay, so once that's done, we're going to go ahead, and also let me know what's your experience been like so far when you're coding with AI. I really want to know your guys' input here. This is not going to happen to you guys. This happens just because I'm a bit paranoid with some installation steps. So next up, you want to go ahead and do cd into that directory, whatever you've decided to call it. And then I just need to run this one command because, yeah, I've set things up to be a bit strict. And in case you're wondering what that is, I basically have just set a rule where it doesn't install a new dependency that's been recently updated if it's not after 7 days old. Okay, so that's typically the time frame where all of the dangerous bugs are wiped out. Okay, so next up, we're going to say git init, basically to set up a Git repo inside of here. And then we can do two things, right? We can either open this up in like ChatGPT Codex, or what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you, I've got the actual code base here for the Airtable clone. So in this case, we have the entire code base that you guys will have access to. So you have access to all of this. But remember, our goal is not to rebuild this, yeah? We're going to just go ahead and strip it down and really focus on certain parts of it, right? You guys get access to the entire thing anyway, right? So I'm going to open this one up by saying cursor dot. Now you might be wondering, well, Sonny, why are you showing us cursor when we could just use Codex or something like that? And I will always stand behind this because what I would like to do inside of these builds is also show you the code itself, right? So I'm going to show you actually my way of working. So you can either open cursor in the agent window. I like to have cursor open in an editor window. So in this case, I like to have it on the side over here, so like an editor window. And then I like to have my codex actually separate over here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in codex in a moment. So give me 1 sec. I'm just preparing and pulling out things to make it a bit neater. So let's go ahead and hide this project and then let's put in here. So here we have Codex. Now, this is just the latest Codex app. Nothing special behind that. I am on a, what's it called? I have, at the starting this session, I have 96%, right? I just used a reset. So in this case, I was doing a ton of work before this, okay? So what we're going to do is first up, we're going to go to Codex. You can see now the GPT and Codex desktop app is now merged into one. What's it called? Let's see what it says. We've got 2 questions actually. Let me answer this one. Vibe Salmon says, code with AI is so awesome, but if I say so blindly, I miss the old days of manual coding. Let's be real. The old days of coding will be an era, right? That was an era where we really just dialed in and just did our coding, but things have changed now and there's a smarter way of working. And trust me, once you nail it, this smarter way of working is so much more powerful, right? So somebody, WDSoft says, so you like Codex over Cursor? They have their places. Every single one of these coding harnesses, Claude Code, Cursor, Codex, all have their place, right? That's what I'll say to begin with, and then we can dive into afterwards. Now, I'm going to click on Choose Project. I'm going to go ahead and type in a new project, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in the name of the project. So we're going to call this one Basecraft, and then I'm going to add a folder to that Basecraft one. So in this case, I'm going to say builds. Let's go into our builds folder. Oops, builds folder. And let's go into our Basecraft, right? Open this. And as you can see, now we have the Basecraft YouTube demo. Create project. Okay, so now our project is on the side. We have a Basecraft project and all of our chats are inside of that. We're going to be local. Well, you can actually have, work trees and cloud setups. We're going to start local. We're going to do a main branch. We're just going to be committing directly here just to start with. And then we need to get things prepared. Now, in order to give yourself the biggest head start, it's always worth preparing your agent inside of your coding harness. Now, the first thing to understand is that when I talk about a coding harness, okay, I'm talking about Codex, Claude, it could be anti-gravity, it could be whatever you decide to use. That is called a coding harness. Okay, so our coding harness today, Codex. So in this case, I'm going to go to the plugins, and I'm going to type in Convex, and I'm going to install this one. This makes sure that we've got a bunch of skills. Basically, our agent can actually connect to our Convex logged in state. So once you go ahead and click install, it will run you through how to connect your app and everything. And it's very simple. Just pop up a web browser. And then the next one is Clerk, right? So I want you to do that for Clerk. And again, it will pull in a bunch of skills. And the reason why I like doing it through the plugins typically is because it's just a lot simpler. Now, the one thing I would recommend is whenever you do any setup for any project, install the skills and plugins to the repo, because that way, anytime another agent comes in, you can go ahead and make sure the other agent has access to those skills as well, as opposed to just the coding harness having access to it. Okay, so that's one thing I would definitely also say. And you can actually check that, I believe, by doing manage. So I think you do it either when you install or just you make sure that it actually also installs to the thing. But I'll show you how we can actually do that afterwards. Okay, so Convex Clerk are set up. You can also do superpowers. I've talked about a bunch before as well, but in this case, we're pretty good there. The only other one I'd recommend today as well is Vercel. Right, Vercel, I would go ahead and connect. So that way, when we come to deploy, very, very straightforward in how to do that. And also, Vercel Eve, I believe, should get actually pulled in. Yep, so Vercel Eve, nice. And that's actually the agentic framework, which gives us everything to make agent building super, super slick and easy. Okay, so now that that's done, we're going to go over here and we can begin building. Now, before we even continue on any further now, this is where we can either A, follow this step, or B, go ahead and do, for example, Convex, or we can go ahead and set up the CLI and all these other things. But I believe the actual prompt does that for us. So I'm going to show you what this prompt does. So I'm going to paste in the prompt. And if we go over here, I believe this actually tells the quick start to set up the CLI. I hope it does, because they were actually pushing that initially and then they've taken it off. And so this is only recently changed, if I'm correct. So if we go ahead and hit a restart. Okay, yeah, so they did have it before. They'll probably bring it back, but there was quite a nice little additional prompt that was here before, which is now removed. We're probably upgrading it, to be honest. But in this case, you can see we want to grab that prompt and that will set everything up for us. And then what I like to do as well is do dash, dash, dash. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to type in clerk CLI. Okay, just simple clerk CLI, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and do a Command-Shift-C to copy this link inside of Arc browser, because a lot of you guys always ask what browser I'm on. And then we're going to go over here and we're simply going to paste it in, right? So I'm going to say first, and what I actually like to do is I just talk to the computer. So instead of this, I'm going to say Super Whisper. I'm going to go ahead and start up Super Whisper. You can use code Sunny25 to go ahead and use that. And I'm going to do Option Spacebar. And I'm going to go ahead and say, the first thing I want you to do is set up the Clerk CLI, and then make sure it's authenticated, and then use the CLI wherever it is needed with the next steps. Okay. Now the CLI is incredibly important. Think about a CLI as we were just in a terminal and we set up our Next.js app. With the Clerk CLI, by going ahead and actually initializing Clerk, firstly logging into the Clerk CLI, it means that that Clerk CLI, like from the terminal, we can actually go ahead and make changes to our entire Clerk setup. So that means that our entire Clerk project, we can configure it, we can set up the webhooks, we can impersonate users, we can deploy, and this is a really cool one as well, Clerk MCP install. And this will actually go ahead and register all of the MCPs inside of all of the platforms, okay? So we're going to go ahead and give it that link and say set everything up for it. And then we're simply going to go ahead and kick this one off. Now, we're going to do this straight off the bat without plan mode. So we're going to go ahead and do this right now. I'm going to close this. And I like to give it full access because in this case, I'm very sure of what this is going to do, okay? Now, you can see that I'll use the Clerk CLI and Next.js pattern skills because this task covers both authenticated Clerk project setup and app router integration, okay? So that's the first thing. Now, that's going to go ahead and run on its own. So we can go ahead and move out away from this now and prepare the next step. So we're going to go into the Convex next. Okay. So Convex is where we currently had all of our tables, right? So in this case, you can see we've got a lot of stuff going on inside of Convex, right? So this is where our bases are living and so forth, and everything is referenced and linked and so forth. Okay. Now, the first thing I want you to do is type in Convex CLI, right? So we already installed the plugin. So that includes all the skills. However, this time we're going to install the Convex CLI as the next step, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to say, next, set up Convex with the CLI, right? With the CLI, and I like to paste the link in. And just notice how I'm on 5.6 extra high, and I'm using fast mode today, okay? So you can feel free to use any mode you want. Again, do you always need to use the most powerful model? No, you don't, right? And that's the biggest mistake I see. I see a lot of people using Fable 5 for very, very simple things. And that's where you're absolutely burning through your tokens. Do not do that, guys. You're gonna absolutely blow through your money for no reason, okay? Now, after this, we're gonna go and do set up Convex with the CLI. Then I want to make sure it integrates correctly with a clerk. So in this case, I'm going to type in Convex clerk integration. Okay. And then here you can see integrate Convex with clerk. Right. So we have two documents here, but the first one that I want to go ahead and use is this one right here. So what I like to do is copy this first link, go back. So paste that in. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy the one from Convex. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste that in. And effectively, I'm just giving my agent as much information as possible. Never assume that the agent has all the answers and they're pre-trained and they're perfect. They're not, okay? The more information you can give, the better off you're gonna be, okay? So next, set up this, and then we're gonna say, then set up the integration between Convex and clerk, okay? And then the most important thing that always happens, guys, with this integration, or many integrations for that matter, is there's certain sort of caveats sometimes. So if we dive down into the actual integration, you can see that, where is it? It was, there was a, where is it? I believe it might have been in actually the other clerk one. So it was here. So once you have integrated it, you always want to go ahead, and here it is. So once everything has been set up with the Convex and clerk integration, right? So that way it's basically, and what I mean by this is that our clerk is aware of what our database layer is. And this is really important for a few reasons, right? When we do any form of server-side interaction, we often want to know who is the user trying to make that server-side call, right? And based on who is logged in, we want to know that. So our backend is Convex, our authentication and billing layer is clerk. So we need to basically, marry these two in integration. So that way, when we're doing any kind of server-side backend mutation or anything like that inside of Convex, it can have the absolute information of who is logged in and all that stuff, because that way we can make sure our system remains secure, okay? So when you do things like that, you can see that there's actually sometimes little caveats. So here we can see, it's important to use the use Convex auth hook instead of clerk's use auth hook. And this stops a very, very important race condition, which AI would never tell you, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and copy the entire URL, and I'm going to paste this in. And I'm also going to go ahead and paste in this snippet right here, right? And of course, in your coding harness, you can then say, remember this rule for next time if you really want to, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. And then we're going to go ahead and basically queue that up next. Okay, so that's queued next. So in this case, it's now setting up the basically middleware, the proxy, getting everything up and running. And then it's also set up sign in, sign up, and the handoff, okay? So if we look inside the code base, and this is why I have cursor open, we can see we've got the sign in page, we have a sign up page, and these are just literally rendering the clerk sign ins, right? And then we've got the normal landing page, which is literally the default get started page, okay? So very, very straightforward. And inside of our environment file, we can see the clerk secret key and the publishable key were pulled through from the clerk CLI, okay? So everything was actually done for us. So it actually set everything up. So if we go ahead and check out our clerk side of things, we should now be able to see if we go to refresh. Oh, it's actually waiting for the user. That's why it's not there. But all of these steps would actually be prepared for us. So if we go over to proxy.ts, you can actually see down here, proxy.ts, boom, it's already set up our proxy.ts, okay? So this is looking really good. I like to use PNPM lock in case you're wondering. So that is not NPM, that is not bun, that is PNPM. And just to make it very, very clear. And also, while we're doing this, please, guys, ask questions. This is the most important time. Every live stream I go live, the questions is where the real value is. So ask as many questions as you possibly can. There is no such thing as a stupid question, okay? So if we jump over here now, we can see it's almost done with this. And what I'm actually going to be doing a lot today is I'm going to switch on Ultra mode. And the reason why I'm going to do Ultra mode is because I like the sub-agent spawning. So if you ever use GPT-5.6 Ultra, especially on Sol Ultra, then basically what you'll find is that the Ultra mode is basically way better at basically orchestrating sub-agents. So we have one main agent, and then say we've got several tasks which can be run in parallel. It will go ahead and orchestrate sub-agents. So I'm going to go ahead and use that because that is pretty damn awesome, okay? So in this case, we can see the first one was a build check. Okay, so that's fine. We don't need to. Sometimes it gets so over the top on testing. It's really annoying. After this has been set up, so pretty much this is set up. If I go to layout, we can actually check ourselves. And this is what I always recommend, right? Whenever you're coding with AI, know what the code is doing, okay? You should know exactly what is happening here. So that the cloud provider is wrapping everything. Cool. Now we get the access to the things like the sign-in buttons and so forth, okay? Fairly straightforward. So next up, I'm just going to interrupt it. I'm going to steer the conversation towards setting up Convex with the CLI and then setting up the integration between Convex and Clerk. Now, because I've already authenticated the CLI for Convex, it will go ahead and actually create another project here in a second called Basecraft, okay? So we can actually see it do it. And that's going to basically be quite handy for us because we don't have to go ahead and create a manual project and all that good stuff. Instead, it's going to go ahead and do it for us. And again, you can see, look, with the Convex add skill, this came from the plugin, right? So remember when we set up this plugin, this imported a Convex add skill. So you can see this one here. This is basically how to basically go ahead and add a project inside of an app, okay? So let's go over to that chat again. Oops, over here. And then Command B to close the sidebar. And this is going to go ahead and basically set up Convex for us, okay? Now, Convex is it works slightly different to our typical databases. You actually run it inside the terminal, and you can either run it against a cloud development deployment instance. So in this case, you can see here we have development cloud. We have a production instance, which is obviously for our live app. We have preview deployments when you have branches, and that's actually part of the pro option. And then we have other deployments, and this is typically you can have agent deployments. You can also have local deployments if you want to self-host. There's tons of things you can do, and I would recommend looking into the self-hosting if you do not want to worry about usage quotas. So it's a very, very good use case for that. Okay, so while this is happening, and you can see that the official integration is one deliberate clerk use auth put use is passed into the Convex provided with clerk. Yeah, that's the only time where it should be using the use auth side of things. Okay, now I set that up. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to go over to shadcn, okay, ui.shadcn.com. And this is effectively a very, very nice, everyone probably knows by this point what shadcn is, but effectively it's components we can basically install and bring into our code base. So really handy little examples of it. Bubble, right? If you ever got a chat bubble going, rather than kind of coding this up manually, you can just import this in, right? You literally go ahead and install it, and then it will go ahead and bring the entire thing in. You can see here, you just go ahead and run one command, it will pull this entire code into our app, okay? And this is amazing for a ton of different things. I let message scroll bar, tons of things. We've got the messages, we've got native select options. We also have navigation menus, all of these things. Like even that behavior going across them, making sure that, the last one closes and so forth, that is all handled for you, right? And it's also what a lot of people don't realize is it has accessibility things that are actually built inside of that as well. So if I am here, for example, and I tab, you see how it goes through that? That is actually something that has been coded in, right? So there's accessibility HTML settings that are always kind of often ignored when you build things. That's why I'd recommend using shadcn, okay? So we're going to go to our docs section, and then we're going to go to you can do a few things. You can install the shadcn CLI. So I'm going to go ahead and actually queue the next part. I'm going to say set up shadcn CLI and init shadcn in this project. Okay. Now you can either do it this way, or if you go to plus new over here, you can actually set up color palette. Right. So here you can actually mess around with different color palettes. Go ahead and really dial it into exactly what you want. And then if we go over here, for example, you can even go ahead and shuffle. So if we do, for example, shuffle, you can actually get a few ideas. And then if say I like this one, I'm going to lock that one, shuffle. And then you can even just kind of mess around with until you find like a color scheme that kind of works with you, right? And it's also down to the radius of the buttons, all this stuff, right? So what I'd recommend is play around with this, and then you can actually just copy this one here. So if you do get code, you can actually go ahead and just run this one command, and it will set up shadcn with this exact configuration. So not many people know that, but it's a very, very powerful thing, right? Kalok says, So hard to ask questions with so much information. Sunny switched to ultra mode a few years ago and only keeps going faster. Thank you for keeping up to teaching us. I appreciate you so much, dude. But yeah, feel free if I'm moving too quick to ask a question or get me to go ahead and, make an adjustment on the pace and so forth, because I will take everything into consideration, okay? If we go into blocks, you can also see there's really handy blocks, and charts as well is amazing, especially for the analytics section. One part in particular that I want to pay attention to is if we go over to the docs, is actually the table component. So you see here, we've got a table, right? Now this table has different elements inside of it. This table could be a very good thing for us. And I believe we used the table building this one out, but either way, you can see rather than hand building these from scratch, we can get a very good head start with this, okay? And then we can use React drag and drop to go ahead and customize things, right? So look at that, it's already setting things up really nicely. Let's go ahead and see firstly if it actually did that before we come back to shadcn. So let's go to Convex and we go over to Airtable Clone. Look, Basecraft, YouTube demo, nice. So we have our Convex project here. We go into our data and we can already see, yep, nothing is here, which is natural. It hasn't run yet, but this has just been created now, okay? So, and we can actually prove that by seeing, you see Quick Sparrow, and if we go into our code, Command B, go into environment.local, you can see Quick Sparrow over here. So it's pointing to that instance, okay? So this is perfect. Now, let's go ahead and go back over to our shadcn setup. Go over to shadcn, let's go to doc. So actually up to the top, go to installation. You can do it either here, you can go, I'd recommend the CLI. And also the skills, I would grab this one. I would say set up shadcn in it, and I'll say also install the skills. And in fact, what's always worth doing, guys, is going to plugins and just checking if they've added it. Shadcn, they haven't added it. Sometimes they, it gets updated. That's why I always check. Install the skills, and you might as well get the MCP while they're there as well. So the MCP server is effectively, it can go ahead and check for all of the latest components from the registries, right? So let's go ahead and copy this one here. So what I had to do is I copy this, and then you see how it anchors to the URL. So we can also say, also set up the MCP server. Cool, right? So we're gonna go ahead and do that, set that up afterwards, and that's queued. So next step is we've got Convex lined up with clerk, and then it's gonna go ahead and do and again, it's just about finished here. And it ran a smoke test. This is one thing I found, which is definitely the case with GPT 5.6 over, in my opinion, Claude models, is it's way better with the testing, right? So it does a very, very good job of testing, in my opinion, okay? So it does an awesome job, in fact. And it finally is good at design, right? So I definitely find it's better at design now. And if you've learned anything new so far, destroy the like button. That's all I'm asking, guys, right? Now, if we go ahead and we're going to steer at this point, so actually let's see what it's doing. Running PM lint. Yeah, so at this point it's just doing checks. So we're going to steer it in. We're going to set up shadcn. And now we've set up 3 very important layers to our app. Okay, we've set up the clerk side of things, so our authentication base is in. We've set up our database base, right? So that way, we basically got the foundation of the database in. And then we're setting up shadcn, the beginning of our design system, okay? Now, of course, as well, Eve we need to set up. Okay, so you see for agents, if you go over to vercel.com/Eve, this is where you can go ahead and set up things for Eve. So you can see here, npm skills add Vercel Eve. So we're going to queue up the next one here as well, right? So we're going to say next setup Vercel Eve, okay? And then I'm going to say install these skills. And you might be wondering, but didn't we install the skills? Yeah, we did. In one essence, in the harness, but I always recommend you install the skills to the repo, okay? So in this case, it's going to install those. It's going to set up Vercel Eve. And then in terms of the actual setup, I've actually created an entire video on how to use Vercel Eve. You can go ahead and check it out by typing in Sunny Sanger and Vercel Eve, and you'll go straight to that video. But you can see here, what's really nice is that just by using folders, you can actually put all your, for example, skills in. Tools are so easy to go ahead and set up. And then we even have like sandboxes, different channels we can connect to, connections, MCP servers for our agent, and we have sub-agents as well. It's absolutely powerful, even including like cron jobs and schedules. So And the main thing I really like about Vercel Eve is it solves the durable layer problem. So sometimes if you trigger an agent to run and it runs for ages and you built it using, let's say, Vercel AI on its own, assuming that it would work inside of like any cloud function, AWS Lambda or so forth, it can sometimes time out because it hasn't been set up in a durable way. Okay, so in those instances, this is durable by default, right? Vercel Eve is built as a framework for agents, just how Next.js was built as a framework for React. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say next up Vercel Eve. Cool, I'm going to go ahead and queue that one in. And then Eve looks like a framework for AI. Yes, exactly. It's a framework for AI. And good stuff, guys. Honestly, Sana Kogos, we are locked in. Amazing stuff. I love the energy, dude. So in this case, we go to auth config. The one thing I want to check is clerk JWT issuer domain. Okay. Now, if we go over to our environment local file, has it added it in? Oh, actually, this doesn't get added in here. So everything inside of Convex, when you see process.env, typically you're wondering, okay, well, this should actually be inside of our env local. Well, no, for Convex, as the deployment instance is actually on the web. So in this case, it's a cloud deployment. If we go to settings here, you can actually see if we go to environment variables, it's set here, okay? So in this case, this one has been set up, and where we can find the JWT issuer domain is actually if we go over to clerk, and again, remember the CLI, just by having CLIs here, this entire thing was set up for us, yeah? So if we go over to our developers and we go over to, I believe it's sessions is either one of two places where you can enable this. We either go to JWT templates, so it's either here or integrations. So integrations either here. Now, is this actually the one that I correctly set up? Spacecraft, I think it was this one, but either way, it has to be enabled. But it might have actually enabled it for us. Let me just double check. Is this the right one? Subscription? Yeah, okay. We don't have subscription plans. Yeah, that's right. Cool. So you can see here, I have not enabled organization billing. I have not set subscription plans up. So we're going to go ahead and set that up afterwards as well. Okay. So this is running the build. So it's basically in the testing point. So now that that is done, shadcn set up, we're going to install and set up Vercel Eve. Okay. So this is basically just setting up our foundations. Now you should be actually committing at each of these different checkpoints. So if we go over to the code itself, you can actually see like we've got 62 file changes. I would have committed ideally at each individual point, right? When we installed skills, when we installed different things like clerk, Convex, when we set up that integration, I would go ahead and actually do all of those things individually. And also for things like this, I would always recommend you just do a simple check like that, and you don't have, you know, a cast like that in the mix, okay? And in this case, what's going on here? Why is this freaking out? Cannot find process, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's because we haven't done an npm install, I believe. But either way, we can go ahead and check this one out afterwards. In fact, what I recommend sometimes, if you do Command P and then you do restart TS server, it fixes a lot of issues that can often be, you know, just randomly pop up and doesn't make sense. A lot of the time that will actually fix a ton of them. Now, the reason why you might be wondering, well, Sunny, this is old school. Why are you doing it like this? Why are you coding in, you know, cursor and all this and that? Because quite frankly, I don't know what it is about the coding harnesses out there, but if you look at the file viewers, I understand that they're secondary, but to me, this is still weak. Like, I don't think these are good file viewers for code. I never edit my code with these, to be honest. So I will always go ahead and often opt for, you know, having these things run the main workload, but then I would always go ahead and actually have this open so I can actually dive into code myself. And I have multiple screens, so I'd always recommend having several screens. And I often will have, you know, all three main harnesses up: Codex, Claude Code, and I will have typically, what's it? Oh God, Cursor. Yeah. FS Driver says, "Are you live, fam?" I am live. Now, if this is finding that, you know, I'm going fast and it's going over your head and you have no idea what the hell to do, and you feel like the AI race is absolutely killing you right now, go ahead, check out the link in the description. We are launching this very soon. Zero to AI Heroes, our community. I say it every live stream, but I promise you, we are very much close to starting the coaching calls. So if you want to be a chance at getting inside of there, go ahead, join this. The link is in the description to go ahead and jump into it, right? This is going to be an exclusive community. We're going to open it in waves. So make sure you put your name down, and it's going to be effectively, imagine sessions like this, but where I'm actually teaching you live on a call. where we have a group coaching call and everything is, there's no questions that are off limits. You can ask me anything you want, right? F. Sidar says, oh, damn, lol, it looks like a YouTube video in the quality for some reason. I appreciate that, dude. Yeah, we really try hard on trying to get that. Setup is complete across Clerk, Convex, shadcn, and Vercel Eve. Awesome, right? So here in this case, this is looking great. The one thing that I often recommend guys also doing here, jump over to package.json. Now, of course, you can see what versions my stuff is at, but in this case, just check that everything is at the latest version, right? So next 16.6.12, yes, everything is so far at the latest version. Convex 1.423, yep, that's right. And then shadcn as well is 4.16, and you can see, yeah, that's correct. Because often AI can throw that curveball and put an old version in, and it messes up so much, and then you're kind of chasing your tail because you simply have an old version. Okay. WD Soft says, no, your pace is fine. I'm listening and working on my own thing at the same time. Nice point is making me reconsider some choices. Thanks. Absolutely appreciate you. Thank you so much, dude. Okay, so in this case, we've set up the main bulk of things. I guess the next thing that makes sense is if I go ahead and check out the actual main build. Let's go over to my, localhost. This is the main build, right? So I want to show you guys this is kind of be like our reference point, right? So we effectively want to build an app like this, okay? So where do we even begin? So let's start very, very simple, okay? I want to have a basic landing page, and I want to have effectively, firstly, the ability to sign up as a organization. I should be able to sign up, create like a team called the Papa Fam, and I should be able to invite my team members to this organization. That's step one. So let's go ahead and set up that flow first, okay? I want to break it down I often get a lot of feedback sometimes that sometimes when we do the whole build at once, it can be often overwhelming. So we're going to break it down into chunks right now. The first one is setting up that organization flow. So we're going to say step one, create a landing page. And we need to go ahead and set up the organization sign-up flow. The app that we're building is effectively an Airtable clone where we have tables which are similar to an Excel format. They can support different data types such as drop-down boxes, dates, file uploads, and so forth. And we should be able to go ahead and have forms which input data into those tables where everything is customizable. But as a starting point, I simply want a basic landing page and the organization sign-up flow created. Make sure you use all of the Clerk CLI and plugins that you have installed. And we also want to set up 3 pricing tiers. One is going to be a free pricing tier to go ahead and get started. One is going to be a starter pricing tier, and one is going to be a pro pricing tier. And we're going to be gating certain features such as AI features behind starter and pro, right? So we're going to have usage quotas, as well as we're going to be charging per seat billing, right? After a certain amount on each of those teams. This is all available inside of Clerk Billing. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and basically pop that in. And in this case, so sometimes this happens. So what I like to do is just close this out, and pop it in. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and simply do, but I'll say for now, just do the landing and org sign up flow. Okay. We're going to break it down. Very, very simple, and go ahead and do that. Now, you can do this 2 ways, right? And I would always often say start in plan mode, right? We could actually do that. I'm going to start in plan mode, right? I would always opt for it, so I would recommend you guys do it too. So we're going to do it in plan mode now, and we're going to go ahead and kick off our first plan. Now, could you please tell us what voice app you're using? Yeah, thank you. Good question, because often people don't ask. But I'm using something called Super Whisper, right? So it's an amazing app. Honestly, I use it a ton. Right? 20 minutes saved just this week alone. And basically, I have it on a shortcut option spacebar. And this is basically called, close that one, Super Whisper. Oh, is that new? Is that from Super Whisper? Hello. Testing. Oh, that's new. Oh, nice. Oh, cool. Okay. That's, I didn't know that. So it's been upgraded. But I paid for Pro, by the way. And if you use code Sunny25, you'll get a little discount going for or Sunny15, one of them. So feel free to grab it. But I paid for a lifetime one on that. I'll plan this as, stopped it. Oops. Continue. Oops, what have I done? let's go ahead and kick that one off. So in this case, continuing, no repos, okay, nice. And also I'll say, also commit the current work, okay? And what I do is I press Command Enter to steer it directly. So that way I don't have to, go ahead and queue it and then press steer, okay? Now, let's dive into the build here and we can see we've even got a demo workspace. I'm not going to cover the entire demo workspace. It's not really worth the time in this build. You've already got the code for that. But the main thing is here, these are actually pre-built components from Clerk. So basically this entire managed flow, all of this stuff is actually already given to us in Clerk. The main thing that we need to do is set up things like our organization billing. So when we go to organization settings, you can see this was already pre-configured for us, limited membership, but we can also do unlimited membership. And then the main thing is the settings. We're going to enable billing organization, and then we need to set up subscription plans. But remember, I'm lazy. I don't want to do that myself. I want AI to do that. So I'm going to get the agent to do it through the Clerk CLI, right? And that is the beauty of it. So now I'm wondering why it's not actually kicking off the separate, agents at this point. But separate based on commitment. So verify the current no files or state with changing plan. Okay, so it's just going to go ahead and context squeeze now. My only caveat was that I believe 5.6. So, was it? It was Opus 5. Opus 5 was actually the one that I was thinking about. So it doesn't matter. But let me know what's your experience been like with Opus 5, and also when it comes down to versus GPT 5.6. What are you guys preferring right now? I want to know. Right? Let us know down below. Leave a comment if you're watching the replay as well about that. So in this case, you can see that repo audit as well. So it's spun off a sub agent. And one thing I've definitely found with GPT 5.6, it's way better at orchestrating agents than what Opus does, in my opinion. Okay. Now let's go ahead and close that one off. Now what I'm going to do today is interesting. I'm going to do a bit of fun today, right? So we have, of course, our base kind of in the mix. But once we have a few fundamentals down, I'm going to go ahead and actually spin off Claude Code and Codex, both agents at the same time in work trees, and go ahead and get parallel work done and show you how you can work across different coding harnesses in tandem without things clashing. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you can do all of that as well today. So to go ahead and prepare ourselves, I'm going to open up Claude on the side, and then I'm going to go ahead and just pull open my code. And I'm just going to make sure I've got a few things set up right. So that way I don't go ahead and show, work that I don't really want to show. Give me 1 second, guys. Let's go ahead and do group by. Okay. So inside of Claude Code, while this is happening, so let's go over here so you guys can see this for a sec. But in Claude Code, I'm going to pull this open for now. And this is, Claude Code on the right-hand side. I'm going to make this a bit more visible. Pull this up. And as you can see, I'm on max plan. My usage is fairly good still, I believe. Yeah, we had a lot of usage left. So current session, nothing used, 4%. Yeah, we got tons left, right, to go ahead and use. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and switch this to open folder. Let's go to our builds. So documents, and then we're going to go to our, this one was called base. It was builds, and then it was basecraft YouTube demo. Open that. And as you can see, I can work on the main or a work tree. Now, we're not going to do anything yet because it's not stable yet, right? So I'm going to come back here, and we've got a few questions, right? So let's go ahead and answer it. So Passion Brain says, thank you so much, Sunny, for all your dedication and hard work. These live streams bring so much value to the community. It's a fantastic environment to learn new things, share experiences, and grow together. Thanks for making this happen. I appreciate you so much, dude. Absolute legend. The myth, the legend says, is ultra thinking necessary for most work? No, remember, ultra is not just for thinking, it's also for the orchestration. Similar to how orchestration meaning the sub-agents right now, okay? So right now, for me, speed is of the kind of, I want it to be fast, I want it to be snappy, I want it to kind of be moving pretty quick. So in this case, that's why I'm on fast mode, which you don't need to do, trust me. It's absolutely fine. It will just take a little bit slower. And then ultra just meaning we have this orchestration, like on full speed. Now, if we go over here, you can see like Opus. If we switch it into ultra code effectively does the same thing with workflows, right? So workflows is effectively that orchestration that I'm talking about, right? So it definitely will take longer, and it's definitely not needed for everything, no. But one thing I would recommend is when you're doing your foundation, the beginning of the app, the architecturing, setting up your database, your authentication, the different layers of your app, I would really recommend you start with a strong model. After that, the small features, 100% you can go ahead and lower your models, but to get your best shot, at getting things right, you want to make sure you have a strong foot forward, and that is a better model. Either GPT-560, in my opinion, or which is actually super good on budgeting, by the way, versus Opus, which is now effectively equivalent of Fable at a huge amount of, a way more cheaper rate. Okay, Mubarak himself goes, dude, I last saw your videos back in COVID teaching React. Damn, nice to see you again. Oh, welcome back, man. Good to see you on the channel. I'm glad that the algorithm reached you. Absolutely awesome to have you here. Do me a favor, smash the like button, enjoy the stream. All right. So in this case, we've got 2 agents done. We've got the last one, the repo. This is for basically going ahead and so you can see it's working away. This will be done in a moment. And then once this is done, we can be sure that our commits will get pushed in. So in this case, it's going to go ahead and do our commits. And what I like to do as well is have the graph open, right? So I'll typically have a graph open where I can see all my commits. And this is something I recommend you all do, right? If you're working with agents, I do this all the time where I typically will go ahead and have, what's it called? Tons of agents in different work trees working away. And then I will come in here just to review and see what actually is going on, right? So all 3 agents are now done. And we can see that these are complete. And now it's going to go ahead and basically figure out the next step. Drafting user input questions for plan. So it's going to go and ask us a couple of plans. Okay. Now, the live clerk instance already matches the B2B direction. Organization membership is required. Automatic organization creation is off. And there are currently 0 users and 0 organizations. Billing is still disabled. So look, how should the first workspace be created after a user signs up? Explicit team step. Clerk asks the user to create or choose an organization before entering the app. Yes, right? We want to do that. And then what should the landing page show for free, tier, starter, and pro in the first slice? So tier preview shows the 3 tiers and positioning without checkout, invented prices, or finance quotes. So enable billing now. Yeah, we want to enable billing right now. And then which visual direction should Basecraft use for the landing page? Editorial, workbench, minimal SaaS, playful, studio. This is more, subjective. Really kind of depends on what you want. I think maybe we should go with the editorial workbench. So let's go with that one. And another thing is that we answered those 3 questions, but for the actual landing page, for the pricing, one thing I like to do is say, for pricing, I want to actually use the checkout button component from Clerk instead of the pricing table component. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm going to go ahead and steer that in. Now, what did I just say to it, right? So in this case, if I type in Clerk pricing table, Clerk has this awesome pricing table component where it's literally 1 line of code, right? You throw that in and everything that you've configured from the billing side will go ahead and literally just pop onto the page in that component. So if I go ahead and click this, then you get the entire checkout flow. Everything just works, okay? But if you want to customize it the way we did, right, in our build, remember we actually had it looking a totally different way. So over here, this is not the typical flow, right? How do we do that? Well, in this case, if we click, for example, switch to starter, you can see I still got the checkout flow and it's looking pretty damn good. How did I do this, right? Well, all I did was I basically went and used the checkout button. So you see here, the checkout button component. By using this, then what we can do is we can go ahead. You have to make sure it's wrapped around an authentication step, but then we have to go ahead and basically simply pass the plan ID and say if it's for organization or for a user plan. And that means that that simple button then would go ahead and open up the checkout for the that specific plan, which means you can then customize however you want. Okay, so that's going to look a lot more cleaner, right? Now, which development pricing should I configure in Clerk for the 3 organization plans? So let's see launch defaults. 3 seats start at $29 a month, includes 5, then $8 a seat up to 10. Pro 79 includes 10, then $12 a seat up to 20. Let's do that one, okay? Which billing period should the first checkout button flow support? Monthly only or monthly and annual? We're going to do monthly and annual. I like those. How much feature gating should this slice configure? Seed AI access. Attach an AI features entitlement to Starter and Pro while deferring numeric usage counters until those features exist. We should actually build the quotas. now, I believe. But you know what? Let's just do the AI features entitlement now, and we can do the quotas afterwards, right? In fact, the quotas, you can build in loads of different ways when it comes to usage quotas. They do actually have that on the way, by the way, usage-based billing. So they're definitely working on that. But in this case, for now, the gating is what I'm talking is absolutely fine. And gating, all that simply means, guys, is when we're inside of an app, for example, say if, for example, I'm on Pro plan, I would gate the access to, for example, the AI, right? So ask questions, question, workspace review. This one didn't have it. This one had it, right? So review every AI change before it's applied, but mainly this one, for example, ask questions across your workspace and review every proposed change before it runs, right? So this one included AI, okay? Now, it's going to go ahead and actually work out all of our plans for us. And then in the meantime, I want to show you guys something. So why did I recommend Vercel Eve? Because remember, I told you, when you actually set up Eve, it's so clean, guys. If we go ahead and see here, I've got an agent folder. This is Eve, right? If I go to channels, eve.ts, this is where I first initialize Eve. Okay, so this can be done in a number of ways, but effectively, if I show you down, where was it? Eve channel. This is our authentication layer plugged into our Eve channel, right? And then we effectively have the app origins that we allow for. We allow get post requests. You can customize this as much as you want, but I'm not going to get down too much into this because this is quite custom. The main thing I wanted to show you was if we go to the actual tools. So here, you see the different tools? They're literally just functions, guys. So look, create fields, right? If I come into here, that's it. That's all it is. For example, right? You have your description of the tool. So that way your AI agent knows what it is. You have an input schema, an output schema, an approval. So this way you can actually have user-based flows. So this is called a human in the loop, where basically, let's say I'm talking to AI and it wants to ask me a question. We can have that, or we can even have an approval flow, right? So this way that require every write approval. And then we have execute. So for example, this is what happens when it's called. So in this case, everything's been sort of expanded into these helper functions here, where this will go ahead and call extra XYZ and so forth. Okay, so coming back over to the build, let's go back over here. So how should the implementation handle the seats field the clerk CLI cannot configure? I'll use the dashboard for the seats part. Yeah. So the seat price, and right now you can set everything up except for the seat-based billing with the CLI. So you can actually set the limit up, but you can't set the price per additional seat. That is on the way as well when I spoke to the team. So that should be not too long as well. Okay, and one thing you'll notice here is I like to be in plan mode for quite a while. All right, so the biggest bit of advice I can give you is don't run ahead and just try and code. Plan mode. Plan mode is so damn important, guys. Don't forget about it. Don't skip it. It's going to be so important for you. Like, just make sure that your agent starts off on a much better foot than just running through and like hacking together things and fixing bug after bug after bug. It gets it right in a plan, then it goes ahead and gets things out, right? The myth, the one that is super helpful. Thank you. I appreciate you so much, dude. So let PM list. So it's basically figuring out our versionings, so that way it knows exactly what to do, right? Now, another caveat, another hiccup that often can happen is actually very common, is that basically when you go to have your integration between Clerk and Convex, what it will also try to do, and AI is very biased towards this, is basically it wants to tap into the Clerk webhook when every time a user is created, and it wants to keep a sync of every user and their subscription inside of Convex. Now, this is debatable because yes, there are benefits to doing that, where your users are synchronized inside of Convex as well as having the records in Clerk, because it's more optimal if you want to do a lookup inside of your database. However, if you screw up one thing, you can end up with something called drift, which is basically where your subscription for a user could be invalid on Clerk, for example, but the webhook didn't catch it, or the webhook didn't file, you made a mistake in the code, or the vibe coded thing that you built basically didn't account for that. And now your user still has access even though they haven't been paying. So things like that can basically happen a lot. So what we want to say here is, I'm going to go and say, we also do not want to have a webhook which synchronizes users from Clerk to Convex. Instead, we will keep Clerk as the source of truth for users, and we will simply go ahead and have, have the minimum required inside of Convex, inside of Convex regarding users, right? Use the user ID to tag things together, and then we can say also if there is, well, so we can. I like to kind of battle with this one. I can say if there is a strong enough argument for having a users table, push it forward as a proposal. Right. So I often give it an option. I don't tend to basically give it like a do this. I will also go ahead and throw a little bit of a curveball in the mix, saying, give me an argument as well why you think maybe based on the plan that you've created that you propose to have a users table. In which case, often, I'll be honest, it does win with that one. I end up having a users table. But for most of you out there, when you're starting with an MVP, I don't recommend you have a users table straight off the bat, because chances are you'll miss the webhook step and then you'll screw it up. So just if you're going to do that, make sure you set the webhook up correctly. Right now, it's writing the plan for us. This is the next step. This is looking good so far. And also, let's go to, I'm going to throw Claude Code over here for a sec. Go over here, we should be able to, I mean, it didn't actually commit. That's interesting. I mean, after the plan, I guess it will commit. And we do Command-Shift-B, we can actually hide that side, this side, right? Now we can see our plan, right? So the plan gets proposed. Let's have a look. Summary, commit the untouched scaffold here first. Okay, so that's basically the step. And then clerk configuration and billing. We'll go ahead and set clerk up, close clerk CLI to. Am I on the latest clerk as well? So clerk CLI, let's just double check that. So terminal. So let's say clerk update. Checking for updates, already on the latest, 2.3.1. Okay, so at the time of this recording, 2.3.1 or a lot. Bro, using some kind of automatic zoom effect in your stream? No, what I tend to do is I've got 3 buttons, 1, 2, 3. And then if I do one transition over here, I have a transition hook. And then I tend to pinch the zoom over here. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, but it's all me. I just tend to try and get it as much as I can get it visible, right? So in this case, configure clerk's current base fee plus, yep, so this is great. And then of course, when it comes to the actual, this is what the one bit I want to talk about as well. So when you actually set up the plans in the back end of clerk, you can actually set up, of course, annual discounts and monthly prices. They include number of seats, the additional seats cost. Obviously, we're gonna have to do that one bit while the CLI can't do that. The maximum number of seats you can also limit. And then the entitlement is basically, you can say for each different plan, you can have these entitlements which are enabled for that organization. So then inside the app, we can check if that organization that is logged in and the member that is part of it, do they have this entitlement? If so, show them the AI feature. If not, don't show them. And that's very, very awesome, right? Because then you can basically switch it on and off from Clerk and it will update on any user's app, right? So we've got the landing and checkout page. Cool, this is all great. Interface and configuration, session task, choose organization, plan and dashboard. And then verification delivery is just going to go ahead and do a bit of testing. So cool, implement the plan. Let's go. So I want to implement that plan. Let's go ahead and do that. And once that's done, we will have the strong foundation, at which point I'm going to go absolutely crazy and have Claude Code run into the mix as well and have separate work trees doing separate things. Okay. So we're going to do a couple of cool things here as well. So I'm implementing this in 2 commits exactly as planned. First, the untouched scaffold, then the landing on board. The problem is as well, though, is sometimes when it's great to have different agents working in tandem when you've got an app built. But right now, when you're starting from the ground up, you're kind of forced in a sequential line, or at least a task-focused line. So when I say task-focused line, I mean, for example, I can build the forms before the table part. However, the schema might change, and then one agent might change it, another agent might change it, and then we're going to have a conflict. So I would recommend having it sequential until your foundation is strong, and then adding new features. Oh, hell yeah, you can have agents flying left, right, center in the mix, right? I'm implementing this as 2 commits exactly as planned. First, the untouched scaffold, then the landing, onboarding, and billing features. I'll use the clerk CLI, organization, billing guidance, Convex, identity rules, and so forth. So, right. In this case, it's reading all the skills, and this is why we installed those plugins earlier, right? And you can see it's actually checking. You see it says sunnysanger /.codex. So this is installed on the harness level. So what you could even do is send another agent to go ahead and basically add these skills to the repo if you really wanted to. And then what would happen is they would actually get added inside of, where is it? Right now we don't have a skills folder inside of here. Oh no, we do. Skills, yeah, right in front of us. .agent skills. And then in this case, we've got Eve, migrate. This is shadcn. We've got Eve and shadcn, but we don't have like Convex and clerk skills here. So if I was to spin up another agent and we didn't set the plugin, right, for that harness, it wouldn't have the Convex and clerk skills. So typically I like to install the skills here, but because we're just working in Codex right now, it's not a mandatory. But does that make sense? Please ask a question if that didn't make sense, because I can guarantee someone will benefit if I explain something around that a little bit more if needed, okay? So at this point, we're actually getting pretty good viewership. Everyone's starting to grow on the views. Oh, that's nice. All right, go ahead and smash that like button, guys, if you're enjoying this. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and also bring the music a little bit, okay? I like it a little bit lower lately because it just lets us focus a bit more. Implementation constraints are now loaded. I'm locking the untouched scaffold into the requested baseline commit first, then the UI auth flow and billing or configuration will land as a separate feature commit. Cool. We've got Sri Lanka in the house. What's up? Good to see you guys. All right. So now it's running a diff check. So it's going to go ahead and basically in a second, we'll go ahead and see commits start pulling in. It's adding. So in this case, we should see staged, stage changes. And this is the important thing. You should know what your agents are doing, right? If you don't know what it just did or you have no idea what just happened, ask the agent. Explain what you just did, right? Explain what, for example, you say, explain what a commit is, right? Explain what these things are, like understand what is happening. If you don't know what Git is, ask what Git is. And if you don't want to interrupt your agent, in Codex, you can go ahead and do /side. Right? And you can actually start a temporary side chat. So I can, for example, say, explain commits to me, right? And now on the side, I can get like a private lesson here. And I can basically go ahead and say, okay, I'm checking the repo's current history, explain what each commit represents in plain English. So now it's going to go ahead and check the commits. And then I can even be like, no, explain what actually is a commit, right? A git commit is a save checkpoint of a project. It records exactly which files change, who made the change, and a short description. So it's not deploy and upload anything by itself. And now you can start to learn a bit more like this, right? So if you're new to coding, this is why I always say, like, this is a really powerful time in coding where anyone can truly learn. The difference is the architecture side, okay? So Oken Merx, I've screwed that name up, but someone in the chat said, what do you think about using GPT 5.6.0 on high settings? Because if you could spend less, what's the difference using high versus ultra except speed? The main thing is orchestration. So sub-agent orchestration. You can see right now, we've actually already had some sub-agents being used, right? Now you might see 21 minutes. Remember, the really nice thing about the sub-agents here is they can go idle and wake up versus Claude code, which when you have that in ultra code mode, they tend to spin up fresh agents every single time. GPT 5.6 is awesome in the way it handles this because basically what it's doing is it's basically saying, wake up to a previous agent. And in this case, look, all three are now awake again, right? So it's not just about the thinking, right? Yes, Ultra is going to be the most thoughtful, but effectively, Ultra is the same as Extra High, but plus orchestration, okay? So that's effectively what we're saying here. Because Ultra, effectively, I have 3 agents now that are basically, running on the side and doing X, Y, Z. So it really depends on what your use case is and what your need is. But in this case, for example, usage remaining 94%. So it's been an hour of usage and I've only dialed it down 2% of my weekly usage, right? So some might say, well, that's a lot. But trust me, guys, like really, if you're not burning through 100% of your usage, then yeah, smash that on Ultra and just do what you got to do. Like most of the time I see people really kind of make the mistake of jumping into code first without a plan mode and these kind of things, and that's where they're stupidly wasting the context sizes and stuff. They're stupidly wasting their usage quotas. Sunny says, smash like button, yes, also a rule of thumb, word of Sunny, if you cannot explain each line of code or understand each line of code, don't ship it, 100%. If you can't understand the code, do not ship it, right? So you can see like this little pop-up window now is quite cool actually. So you can actually go ahead and what's that one do? Oh, did that hide it? Or you see here, like picture in picture. Well, you can, and there's also a cool little thing actually, which I think you can see. You've also got this little pet thing inside of Codex lately. You see this little thing? which is kind of like interesting. But basically, this little pet thing can actually go ahead and it just shows you what it's up to and stuff, like what tasks you have running. It's handy if you've got loads of stuff happening inside of Codex. And also you can see that it's actually going through, but right now it's using Chrome integration. Okay, so cannot express seat allowances or per seat overages. So I'm using, so right now it's actually using my browser to do it for us. So right now I've actually enabled browser usage, and you can see, look, you see that the little cursor? It's in here, and look what it's doing, guys. So right now this is setting up our actual usage, because basically the CLI didn't allow it to set up. Look at this. Look, I'm not touching this. Okay. So Codex, especially GPT-5.6, is very, very good at using computer use. Okay. So at this point, let's see what it does. Right now, it's navigating through things, and it's basically figuring out how it can go ahead and, enable things as needed. Right. So let's see. While that's happening, and one thing I like about the computer use from ChatGPT, as in Codex, is it doesn't interrupt what I'm doing. So you'll notice that, like, for example, if I go ahead and look into this a bit more, we can see, look, it's actually still moving around. So it's very hard to see a little kind of tiny bit there, but it's actually going ahead. And this cursor will move around, do its thing, and independent of mine. It doesn't need to interrupt me. Whereas Claude computer use is just frustrating sometimes, where it just hijacks the everything and kind of runs in that way. And we're also going to be covering an Expo builds on this channel as well, which you guys have said you love as well, and that's really important, because with the Expo builds, you can actually use the entire simulator inside of here, which is absolutely awesome. I've done it recently. But look, jumping back over here, look, it enabled monthly base fee, annual base fee, and this is the reason why it was actually more interested here, is because of the per seat fee, that it wasn't available inside the CLI. So it's now doing it through my Chrome access, right? So obviously I've authenticated it to do that, but this is just things to know about, right? So if it can't do something, GPT-5.6 is absolutely amazing at going in and basically figuring out how the hell to do it besides that. Look, and it's even added in the monthly base fee. It added in the annual base fee. So this is actually not going to be 290. Annual base fee is equivalent. Fixed amount, annual base must be equal to a lower than. So it's actually got confused here. The annual base fee is monthly equivalent. So that's probably where it's screwed up. So let's see, it will probably fix it itself. It enabled per seat fee. And now we can see in a moment that it will probably self-heal and fix this on its own. And while it does that, we can go ahead and have a quick little water break. But it's quite crazy when, look at that. So it went ahead and changed it. So it said, okay, the annual base fee is $24.19. It went ahead and changed. Look, it added a feature, and now it's going to go ahead and add in. It said, okay, look, it's doing it all. It filled in all of these things, and now it will go ahead and create this AI features. Go ahead and enable that. And now, because it basically couldn't get around the CLI constraint around this one feature here, it's going to go ahead. Look at how we have separate cursors, guys, right? So it inputted all this information. Boom, added that in, and now it will likely hit save, and that will be added in to the setup, right? And just think about it. If it's able to do this here, like, it saved it. Awesome, right? If it's able to do that here, the one thing that look at this. This is so clever, right? The CLI cannot express seat allowances or per seat overages. So I'm moving to authenticate clerk dashboard only for those plan fields. Then I'll return to this CLI for the rest, or the final verification, right? So that is pretty damn cool. Right. So then it went ahead and created the plan itself. So it's going ahead and doing all of that. So this is pretty awesome. Right. So now we can let it do its thing there. And in the meantime, we can see, obviously it's only doing that right now. Setting prices. And on the side, what you can actually do is, let me go ahead and just pop that. Oh, you can actually give that to your pet. That's what that one is. So you can go ahead and do that. Or in this case, sometimes, like, I don't like to have it open, but it is quite handy, to be fair, especially if you've got loads of things running. I do find that helps. What ChatGPT plan are you on? I'm on the max $200 a month plan. Yeah, so that is I believe it's called the Plus or Pro or something. But whatever the $200 plan is, that one. Right. For all of them, I'm on the $200 plan. Right. So in this case, like, it did it for Pro. It configured it. It done starter and so forth. So it's done the same thing. It's enabled the AI features as well over here. So it's looking pretty good. You can see over here that monthly base fee, seat-based as well. Adding that in. And now on the side, probably could have done that with a sub-agent, to be fair. But I think it could be sequentially blocked, right? Meaning like it needs to get past this one step before it does it. And this is the thing, like most of the time now, you're often not sitting at the computer, waiting for it to do its thing. You're pretty much doing another task, or you're pretty much doing something else at the time, or basically working on another area of your app. So typically I tend to have loads of chats open at one time, not just one. Okay, so at this point it's going to go ahead and do that again, because I think I interrupted that one actually. So I added in the AI features, cool, and then it's done it. Nice. Then this is the bit where I guess we're being patient, and this is me being lazy. I guess I could have done that all myself, but it'll be done in a moment. Yep. So you see, it saved it, and now what it's done is it's set up the entire plans perfectly. Like free, starter, pro, 10 limit, 20 limit, and then 5 included seats, $8 a month additional for per seat. And this one, pro, you can have 20 limit, right? And you can have 10 included with pro, and then after that, it's $12 a month for per additional seat, right? We have monthly and we have annual options to pay as well. Absolutely awesome, right? So in that case, it's done with the computer use. And in my opinion, that's the best computer use I've seen yet, which is why I have my Hermes agent use GPT-5.6. Because when I want it to go ahead and do tasks that I would be doing to run the business and so forth, I use it because it's just awesome at computer use. So I have it on the Mac Mini. And again, all of that stuff I will end up covering inside of Zero to AI Hero. So make sure you join our community, up and coming. Link is in the description. Go ahead and check that out, right? So now we can see, look, it's going ahead and jumping back into the coding side of things. So it should start picking up the speed of things. And again, this will go ahead, and what I like to do is we go here and we can basically see what changes have been made. So now it's using a deprecated pattern here. So we can actually, it will fix that on its own, to be honest. You can see the page has been updated massively. So we can see our page.tsx has been your team's working material. The table is only the beginning. And of course we can change this up as much as we want as it goes on. We've got workspace preview and so forth. We've got the session tasks. This is basically for the onboarding when we choose our organization. We have auth navigator, which I assume is the header. Yep, I'm pretty sure this is the header. Yep. And then we have workspace preview, pricing preview, and so forth. Okay, so these are all, whenever you see components /UI, that is shadcn, right? So, oh, wrong one. Let's go over here. Okay, so 3 plans are now live in development. Free inherits a 3-member cap. Starter is 5 included, 10 max, pro is 10. And both paid plans carry AI features. I'm wiring those live plans into custom checkout and dashboard flow. No pricing table component or identity webhook is being introduced. Cool. Okay. So already 1 hour in, or 1 hour 25, and we've basically got a pretty strong base set up, right? So refining pricing UI and checkout integration. And one thing that's happening here is it's not being very aggressive with the sub agents, right? So here I want to basically say, I want it to be a lot more aggressive here with the sub agents. So let's go ahead and actually accelerate this development by having more sub agents. And I want you to actually begin building out the rest of the app, including the bases. So effectively the tables that a team can create, which includes the rows, data types, all of it should be customizable. And then also the forms themselves. So we should be able to have several forms per base, and each form should be visible, have a preview link, which basically we can send out. And this is the one that you would send to a random person, and they would basically be able to enter information and go ahead and submit it into, and then the information that they entered should go into the base table. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this, and we can say, to ensure it's all real time, we're obviously using Convex. However, we also want to make sure it's multiplayer supported. So look into the Convex components, especially the presence and multiplayer ones, for anything that you could use here. Go ahead and feel free to use as many sub agents as you want here, because I'm focused more on the speed. Okay, so in this case, I don't really have a budget constraint here, so I'm going to go ahead and just push this forward. And the reason being is I want it to be aggressive. I want it to be way more aggressive in terms of sub-agent use, right? So right now, what I realized is I gave it a very conservative driving kind of speed with the plan. So right now I'm basically going to go ahead and say, no, I want you to go ahead and actually branch out. So what it's going to now do behind the scenes is going to define its schema. So basically, you know, how we set up Convex, and then that way how it can go ahead and create bases for teams, which is those different tables, and then also go ahead and create forms, right? So if we go into our Convex actually over here, let's see if we have any schema. So we don't have any schema at the moment, right? Right now, yeah, we don't have any schema at the moment. Okay, so coming back over here, it's going to go ahead and let's do its thing. Now, this is typically where you are pretty much stuck in a waiting period. So this is, again, an amazing time to ask questions. And again, remember, we're going to be focusing more on getting the table set up, getting the form set up and customizable, and then making sure it can be sent over to the end user, and then having an AI agent where that agent has tools to go ahead and actually be useful to the end user, okay? And obviously right now, none of this includes the AI agent work. So what we could actually do is have Claude Code spin up. However, again, remember, we are making active changes here. So we don't want to have two agents fighting. That's typically where we'd use a work tree. But again, our database layer hasn't even been started yet. So that's going to be a problem if there's a lot of clashes there. I'm expanding the current slice rather than stopping at onboarding. I'll keep the landing building work intact and parallelize the next layer into Convex base, and then publishing with separate official docs pass on Convex presence multiplayer, so we can use supported components instead of inventing coordination primitives, right? And one thing I want to talk about here is if you type in Convex multiplayer, you actually have a nice little helper. Well, it's not even this one, it's more the presence component. So you have different components. So this presence component is pretty handy for telling if, for example, how many people are in a room at the moment, or how many people are looking at the table, for example, right? And this can be quite handy, to be fair, like how many people are looking at a certain post, or how many people are in, you know, your video game room, or whatever the case, right? Even live attendees, that's a very good one actually. Yeah, so if you ever need that, it's a great use case for that. Now in the side, what I'm going to do here, and this is a bit more risky, but I kind of want to try it on the stream, is I'm going to inform this agent that there is a second agent starting with the Vercel Eve stuff, right? So I'm going to make them aware of each other working on the same main branch. And we're going to see some of the dangers of doing that. And we're going to see how, if you are going to do that, right, which I do not recommend, but if you are going to do that, I recommend that you at least give the proper context to each agent, so that way they don't start interacting and basically breaking the other's stuff, right? Whilst you're doing this work, I'm going to start another Claude Code agent on the same branch as you. And this agent is going to be working purely on Vercel Eve and basically the widget around that. So if you see changes which are not related to your work, do not override or change them. Instead, it should be a point of discussion, and there should be a proper resolution around that. Right? So the problem is here, the thing is, it's actually, for the sake of not having the clashes here, to be honest, I don't feel good teaching you this because it's not right. Right? If we do that, we're just basically doing a messy approach. I would not do this in real life. I'd end up like, this is just to kind of show something cool here. Instead, what you should be doing, if you are going to do that, simply have a Git work tree and focus on a feature which isn't going to be breaking another thing. What I want to do here instead is I'm going to have another agent. So in the same harness, right? So it's going to sub-agent effectively out. So let's create another sub-agent, which is all going to be around how our Eve agent can be useful to the end user. So our focus here should be creating tools which the agent can use to get the organization's information and also help modify information. Make sure you have approval gates with human in the loop elements. For example, I should be able to come into a table and ask the AI, if I'm a pro member, what the table is about, any kind of gaps inside the information. It should be able to read the information inside of Convex. It should be able to manipulate the information if I wanted to make changes to it, and so forth. So we're going to do it inside the same one. The reason why this is a much better way of doing it is because basically if it creates a sub agent here, and let's say, for example, it makes a change to the schema, it can simply send messages to these subagents, right? So this is why I really am a huge fan of GPT 5.6 Sol Ultra as opposed to Claude Code, because Claude Code doesn't do this way, right? So it basically, Claude Code will wait until the entire workflow is done, and it's so aggressive with the way it does it. It'll spin up like 100 agents sometimes, which I just find super overkill, whereas this is way more conservative. And what you'll find is these agents have communication between them. So if I dive into this one right here and we scroll up, you should be able to see sometimes another agent in the mix. So if we look over here, for example, you can see, look, it updated another agent, right? So for example, this is the main agent, but sometimes if we go up, maybe we can see it over inside of here. So we look at some of the previous work. What you'll see is right now they haven't had any reason to communicate. But what you actually find a lot of the time is if, for example, a change is made in this agent that affects this agent, there'll be a message sent across. So they actually have inter sub-agent communication, right? So it's very, very cool. This is another reason why I'm a huge fan of using Ultra. And I would say, if you ask me my opinion on, would I prefer to use several new chats with Git work trees versus one chat with sub-agents, I'm more pro to using one chat with sub-agents unless the features are completely separate apart and not at the foundational level. So foundational level meaning that right now we're adding Eve, right? Which is our AI agent. That is more of a foundational layer thing, because if the database changes, it needs to know straight away what happened, right? Whereas if I'm adding a new feature such as like, I don't know, upgrade the way that a pop-up happens, right? That's totally independent. Doesn't matter about any foundational thing. I can set a Git work tree. I could use another coding harness for that matter and just spin it up in a Git work tree and then submit a PR and merge it in, okay? So these are really kind of the kind of architecture things that I want you to kind of focus on and think about when you're working on this kind of workflow, right? And again, feel free to ask any more questions. Let me go ahead and actually change the music a bit, because right now I've got Jay's picks on. So got Jay's stuff. Let's do this one here. So at this point, let's see what it's up to. Now, one thing you actually have to be careful of, and remember, an agent should not be able to have cross-tenant tooling. So what do I mean by that? If there's, let's say there's 100 teams inside of this app right now, right? So say great, it got some traction. There's 100 teams inside the app. If I gave an agent the ability to basically just modify, whatever data it decided to modify, that is a absolute recipe for disaster. Whereas if I instead went ahead and gave it a tool, but basically first it had to basically kind of scope down and get, a proven access, so it can only modify data from one organization. Now, even if it tried to go rogue, it couldn't do that. So your tooling is where you can actually have the access control, which stops the horror stories that people think about or hear about a lot of the time. Okay. The multiplayer lane has narrowed to Convex's official Convex dev presence component. I'm installing that component now. It will power live collaborator presence, while Convex's ordinary reactive queries continue to provide the real-time rows, fields, and form submissions. Right. That's one thing I love about Convex, right? By default, it's real-time. So you don't actually need to add in like anything too crazy or anything like that to go ahead and dive into that. So it spun up another agent here called Eve product. So look, I'm taking the Eve backlane lane. I'll use the install Eve skill and its local docs to build an organization scoped agent. See, organization scoped agent, gap analysis and approval gates, gated rights. Then hand the front end contract back to the main implementation. So very, very cool. All right, so this will go ahead and do the back end set of work. So this is what you want to effectively get to a point of doing. Now, let me know in the chat. Are you effectively leveraging sub-agents right now? I'm very curious. What's your workflow look like? Is it several different chats at one time, or are you using sub-agents like this? If you're not, I really want to know. And I want to know why you haven't yet, because obviously it allows me to kind of help you guys out a bit more. Right? The multiplayer lane has narrowed to Convex's dev presence, which I knew it would. Right? So let's go over here. We can see we've got a ton of changes already. There's lots of work underway. Heading back over here, we can see the repo audit. And again, you see, look what's happening here, right? Based on the main agent now, is communicating with the repo audit, it's updating these agents, right? So if we come over here now, we can see like recommended flow for configure clerk organizations B2B only with the CLI. And then it's going and doing a bunch of work. So let's go ahead and see down here. Finish the transaction. So you see how they're communicating. So once it finished this work, it updated the main agent, right? So this is exactly what happened here. And then it can continue on with its checks and so forth. And again, remember I said GPT 5.6 is way more prone to testing, right? So it's a lot more test heavy, which is super powerful and a lot very, very useful for a lot of things. The public form backend is now real, including published token validation and direct Convex storage upload URLs. I'm wiring the anonymous /f for form token experience, so a shared link can accept type values and files and immediately create a live record in its destination table. Awesome, right? Now you'll notice how in the actual build that I gave you, we had a bit of different stuff. We had something called turnstile, right? So I'll show you that over here actually. So if we go back over to, let's go to our GitHub. Where is it? Yeah, here. So you can actually see turnstile. Now you might be wondering, what is that, right? We're not going to cover this exact thing today, but I did add it in the build in case you're wondering what it is. And what that is effectively Cloudflare has a service which basically allows you to check if this is actually a real anonymous submission. So what does that mean? Basically, let's say we had some kind of voting system through a form. Imagine if I created a bot in 2 seconds and I basically said, okay, I want you to go ahead and absolutely hammer this form 1,000,000 times. That would massively sway and ruin the voting through the form, right? So what's happening with the turnstile keys in Cloudflare is it firstly detects, is this a bot? Is this a real user? Is this the same IP address? It does a bunch of different checks, and all of that is very much responsible for making sure that you're not getting hammered by a bot, basically, right? So we use that inside of the build. So in case you're wondering, when we had that, Cloudflare little pop-up at the bottom, that is effectively what it was for, right? And Cloudflare has a ton of agent plugins and stuff, so you can feel free to go ahead and set those up yourself, right? So let's see what's going on now. So I guess the next step after that is we have our agent. So let's go over here. So looking at the actual demo, let's open our workspace. We will have the bases in play. We will have the start of this kind of getting built out, which is the main thing we're trying to focus on. Then drag and drop is something which you can implement in tons of different ways here, right? In this case, I've got a drag and a drop point where it can happen, or you can actually implement, for example, if you see in the Kanban, we've got React DND. So this is actually React DND, which I'm more of a fan of React DND. I think it's more of a nicer user experience. You could even do it a bit better than this, where it moves out the way. But these are all things which you can add on to. But if you're all curious about what that is, it's called React DND, right? In this case, we built a custom implementation. And even here, if we typed in product, for example, nice, right? Very, very cool. Okay. So at this point, again, like I said, this is typically where most of the time I would not be here waiting. I would not be here kind of, letting this just build and doing nothing. I'll be doing something else, coming back to it. And that is typically what development looks like now, a lot of the time, right? The main thing really is code reviews as well. So every time a key feature is added in, I would highly recommend that you stop and you submit a PR. And as part of your PR process, I already actually have for my own setup, if I submit with Claude Code, Codex agent will wake up and check the PR. If I do it the other way around, it's going to go ahead and do the opposite, right? So this is basically like something that's really quite important in the code review process, right? VR train, what is the target audience for this channel? It's difficult for non-technical to know where to start. So it's a very good question, right? So I do tend to go in the deep end. However, if a non-technical person actually followed me and kind of paused, really looked at the prompts I'm doing, it's actually all stuff that they could actually do themselves now. Whereas before it was a lot more kind of, you had to know how to code to even keep up. So yes, we move pretty quick, but we do that because these live sessions are recorded. So afterwards, you can obviously come back and rewatch it. You can get AI to transcribe it, kind of help you out with it. But in this case, he goes, just need a framework to start building non-slop side projects. Yeah, so there's many things. So every single build, I tend to go ahead and introduce little gems, little bits of information, our advice. For example, in one of the builds, we did a heavy session on Git work trees, why you want to do that to prevent like collisions and so forth. But in this case, my biggest thing for you is that if you feel that things are, you're a new starter, things are way too quick for you, my only solution to this that I can think of, besides creating dedicated videos, which I have been doing a lot of, right? You can either watch the dedicated videos or you can join our community, and I have coaching calls inside of here, right? So the link to join our community is down below in the description, and every single week we'll be running coaching calls. So the main reason of those coaching calls is that basically you'll be in a call with me and you can be like, Sonny, stop. You're going too fast. Explain what the hell just happened. And that's where I can stop, break it down. And we tend to get quite a lot of people in those coaching calls. So by being in those calls, you can really dial in and then think about the advantage you'd go ahead and have. Then you'd be able to go ahead. And so VR Train says, yeah, I watched a couple of your 4-hour builds, but even then, sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. So that is, a valid point. Many people are in your situation right now. I would highly recommend you just join our community. My main advice here, and a lot of the Papa Fan members will, be an testament to this. Basically, be a part of a community where you can speak to people, because a lot of the time, if you feel like you're drowning, it could just be as simple as asking the one question to be like, that bit didn't make sense, and just someone can explain it. And it's that simple. And we have a huge community over at school called University of Code, which you can feel free to check out as well. But our main community is Zero to AI Hero, which is very, very shortly launching. So feel free to join that. That is going to be where I promise you will get all of your confidence. So if you haven't already, sign up to that and let me know when you've done so. All right. Here we've got Eve's backend now built successfully. Amazing. Its tool surfacing is appearing in the tree. Let's take a look. So let's go over here. We can see agent. We can see tools. Nice. Now, this is one thing I hate that GPT does a lot of. You see what it's doing here? It's actually disabling a lot of the default tools like bash.ts, create record. These are new, sorry. These are fine. Glob, grep, and so forth. So this one right here, thank you so much, VR He goes, we'll join, bro. Appreciate what you're doing. And let me know as well, like really, we're trying to make that as accessible as we can to everyone. So let me know, what is accessible to you? What does that look like in the chat right now? And I can, figure out how to best help as many people join the community as we can. All right, so here, I'm going to go ahead and say, don't disable the default tools. So basically what this is doing, too much fluff. That's what I tend to write here, too much fluff. So you can see it's basically creating new tools. So these are really good. These are like, custom tools. It's got some deprecated functions, but we can leave that for now. But the ones like grep, glob, and so forth, it basically is just deactivating them. So we're saying our agent should not be able to do that. And yeah, it's a good call for things like bash, right? But it's also bloating out a tutorial in this case, right? So what I'd really recommend here is if you look at the Vercel Eve documentation. So if I go up to the top, read the docs, pop this up, right? You can see here that we have, what's this? Oh, that's actually, I was gonna say it was the same thing. But what we have here is tools, and you can see click on tools, and you can see here we have default tools. So scrolling down, they've changed these docs. I think they did get rid of it because people were getting confused, but the actual tools, yeah, I think they got rid of that. Yeah, tools, sandbox, yeah, they got rid of it, I think. So when I made my video on this, you can actually get rid of those tools. Let's have a look. Tools. Project structure tools. Okay, yeah, so it's got rid of them. Yeah, so we don't actually need this disable tool, right? It's basically saying whatever default tools came in the mix, go ahead and basically disable some of these. But we don't want to do that, right? I think it's a bit of overkill. It makes it messy. It's hard to tell which one of these are actually custom, right? Create record, delete record, get organization context. This is a very important one, right? So this is basically getting the tenant's organization context. And we have update record cell, we have web fetch, web search, and so forth, right? Well, to be honest, and you see, look at that. That's much better now. So the agent just deleted it. Now I can see what tools I care about, right? This is way more important. Agreed, I'm removing 9 disabled stubs. So in Eve, inherit is default delegation. Now, you can do something really cool with Eve, which is basically sandboxes. So sandbox is basically like, imagine that every single agent had its own little box, its own little isolated, imagine they had its own little kind of environment, let's call it, right? So basically every chat that I kind of have with that agent, it starts off in a new box. And then because it's in a new box, it can go ahead and do any kind of, calculation. That includes like a Python calculation, a JavaScript calculation. It can create new files in its little box. And it's kind of like, it's able to do really cool things like Python kind of, complex calculations or whatever the case. You can do anything you want inside your sandbox. And it's not going to spill into another agent session. So this is really handy, especially if you have really complex things that you want to go ahead and do. This is where you can go ahead and really make use of that. So Sonic Code Absolute G goes, I will recommend you get your fundamentals nailed, and then once that is solved, use AI to learn what you don't know. Sonny preaches that a lot, and then join Pop Red. Amen, dude. That's it. One thing I'll also say is that Zero to Full Stack Hero, which is our flagship course at the moment, which taught a lot of the fundamentals, me and Jay were discussing this the other day. We're thinking about potentially including that for absolutely free as part of joining the Zero to AI Hero community as part of the beginning set of members. So if you're one of the early founding members of the community in the new community, then yeah, we're even thinking of giving that. So pretty awesome. Max plan with 20x usage. I'm always on the 20x usages because it's just way better value for money. Okay, so in this case, it deleted a ton of stuff. That's perfect. Planning session ID and proxy and upload validation. Cool. Now we should be able to actually begin testing this very shortly. So we've actually got, this is awesome. So now go to schema.ts and we can see our tables. So this is our database tables, right? So we got bases, which represents the tables themselves, like the actual kind of Excel looking tables. Oh no, we actually got bases, which is independent. Okay, so in this case, we've got tables, which belong to a base. So a base represents, so let me just clear this up. A base represents, you can have multiple tables and multiple forms. Each table can have several forms appended to it, right? So something to mention. Can you show the current codex usage after all of this work? Yeah, absolutely. I can show you that. We go to usage remaining. I'm at 88%. So I've used 8% today of my weekly, and I've been hammering it in fast mode. So if I was not on fast mode, it would have been 4% usage approximately, right? 4%, 3%, I reckon it would have been. But fast mode adds more into it. So that's it. Good. Ita says, I missed some bits, but are you using any design skill? The dashboard looks really clean and polished. No, it's a good question. So I didn't actually use a design skill. However, I have got some installed, which you could have picked up on. But the main thing that I'd recommend is I asked it to do a revamp at the end. So the first iteration did not look like this, but it is really clean. Like it is, I was very impressed when it came out with this, to be honest with you. But I constantly go back and forth with AI on designs. GPT-5, GPT, 5 before, basically 5.6, used to suck at this, right? I'll be honest, it used to be awful for the design side, in my opinion. But with GPT 5.6, especially so, it's awesome for design, right? So I really like it. And basically what I would do is I would go into plan mode and I would basically argue with it a lot back and forth until I get my design kind of questions asked to me. And then once that's the case, cool, it goes through, right? So that's how I was able to revamp it. And I actually revamped this design about 20 minutes before the live stream, believe it or not. I was not happy with the design. I didn't want to show it on the stream. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to change it up. So 20 minutes before live, I actually changed this. And it got an extra, even cleaner look. Tables Assistant is now connected to every active table with clerk entitlement gain and native approved deny controls. This is awesome, right? So human in the loop. So a big little learning moment here is we go up to Eve, read the docs. Let's make it full screen. Close that on. We can see if we go to tools, human in the loop. This is very powerful, guys. Whenever you build any kind of AI agent, there's two very common human in the loop moments. And what do we mean by human in the loop? It means when the AI is doing its thing, thinking, answering, blah, 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 you want to interrupt it. So it's called a human in the loop, right? Or it needs something from you to stop, like it needs the human in that loop, right? So number one is approvals, right? And number two is questions. So a lot of the time when we're in plan mode, we see questions. Approvals, you'll see if you're not in, for example, I'm in approve for me mode, or actually full access I should be. I prefer full access mode for me, okay, not for everyone else. But ask for approval would say, can I go change this? Can I do this? Can I do that? You can have your custom agent do that as well. So human in the loop before used to be a pretty messy thing to get right. But in this case, you can simply just add in one line of code, boom, approval always, once, never, or you can have a policy, right? And this is pretty awesome, right? So the policy is, this is a policy basically how you want to call it. And then you can have the question, which is the questions are slightly different. The built-in ask question tool lets the model pause and ask the user. Rather than guessing it has no execute, the model calls it with prompt options, allow freeform, right? So in this case, it's a default, part of the default harness. So you can actually see this, the harness itself. And I think this is where, oh yeah, look, this is where it is, the built-in tools. So these are those tools that we saw earlier. So, and by the way, in case you're wondering, you can self-host your Vercel Eve agent. Okay, so right now I'm going to obviously deploy to Vercel everything in this instance, just to be easy. But you can actually self-host the Vercel Eve part if you don't want to have Eve agent on, Vercel, for example. Because I know a lot of people like to kind of, branch out, self-host, do whatever they want to do. You can absolutely do that as well. So this is all regarding the harness, the default tools and all that stuff. Okay. Now, over here, independent review found a few integrity gaps beyond the happy one, tightening them now. Transaction creation limits, automatic form synchronization when fields are added, safe unpublishing when schema edits when invalidated live form, bounded public values, and freeform Eve approval questions. This is quite important actually here. Safe unpublishing when schema edits would invalidate a live form. Think about what that means, right? This is very important. If we have real-time data, and this is the thing, like this is where architecture counts for everything. If we have real-time data, and then we have a form which is out there and someone's filling it out, right? And then basically, let's say I change the field and I basically say, okay, I don't want that field anymore. In the table, what that technically could have done is remove a column, right? So it could have removed a column, or it could have just said, no, we don't need that information. Now, if you didn't do that in the correct way, when they submit their form that they're looking at, they could breach an error and be like, well, the schema changed. What do we do now? So you have to account for these things, right? Whether it would be unpublishing before you make a change, whether it would be, they're called lazy changes or lazy edits, or kind of, safe updates. You can do a couple of different approaches around that, but it's all things to consider, right? Now, this is context compacting. So this is starting to do the tables and forms. Let's actually go ahead and do package.json. So let's start up this app. So what I like to do is, if I'm inside of cursor, Command I, and I can actually see that I've got cursor grok 4.5, composer 2.5. Now, cursor grok 4.5 is very good for quick stuff, I'll be honest. So in this case, if I would say, for example, add a concurrency script, or use the, I believe Convex actually has a -- start command. But either way, use the concurrent script or add one. So that way we start Next dev and Convex dev in parallel. Okay. So what I'm saying here is quite cool, because basically to run your front end, so your Next.js app, or that includes the backend of Next.js, basically you run pnpm dev, which will run Next dev. And then you actually need to run Convex dev to run Convex locally, right? But it's not created a script here, which is fine. You don't need to have the script. But in this case, what's cool is you can do it through concurrently as well. And basically it's installing it now. And then basically it's going to have it so it runs it in concurrent mode. So in this case, pnpm dev now runs concurrently Next and Convex, and it has different colors for them. And you can do like blue and red, right? So blue, red, the first one will run pnpm run Next dev, and the second one will run pnpm run Convex dev. Okay, and then these are basically branching off to these, right? So this is really, really cool, because now if I do pnpm dev, we can see concurrently one will be blue and one will be red. And now you see in my terminal, I can see the blue stuff is my Next logs, and the red stuff is my Convex logs, right? And this is really nice, because now, firstly, we've also got a nice little UI forming, kind of cool. But in the back, in a second, we should be able to see Convex also come to life, right? Here you go, Convex. Developing against deployment, preparing cloud functions. And we can actually see here, npx convex AI files installs are not installed, right? So in this case, I can copy this. I can just get my agent to do that, right? While we look at this. But in this case, there you go. I'll install the Convex AI files now. And we'll install it into our actual command B. You can see over here, we'll actually have the Convex skills being added in. So again, to the repo. So regardless of the harness that we're using, you can go ahead and basically pick up those skills, right? So Claude Code will now have that skill if they were to come in, okay? So in this case, you can see that this is why I like using concurrently, because you have red, blue, sorry. It's just easy to see what's what. Typically, you don't use red. It can be like, it could be seen as it's like some kind of error going on. But this is kind of cool. Look, we have a kind of, our table views, collect like a form, icon, front end door. So again, this is okay. I like this. This is the kind of custom pricing. Let's go ahead and actually look at it over here. So localhost. I believe we're running on localhost 3001 for the other demo. And you can see the table is on the beginning. So it's a bit busy going on over here, to be honest. Not a huge fan, but in this case, like we've got single select date, attachment, long text, checkbox, collaborator, right? So different kind of forms. We've got our custom pricing cards. And then this again, like for me, this is too hard to read. It's very kind of, I see where they're trying to go with it, but I don't like it so much, right? Base as well. So in this case, you got to jump into that. So we're going to test yet because I might screw something up with the data side of things. So Jane 8 as well. Yo, what's good? Good to see you here, dude. Got a PubFam OG member. Vibe Summer says, for custom forms, I store each record with schema for submission for maintaining the version, because if any changes happen in the forms, also it still works for past submission. That's not a bad suggestion, actually. You could do that. You actually could do that. It's not a bad suggestion. You could. There's definitely an architecture where that works and is quite clean. So that way, if somebody was to go ahead and add it in at a later point, or if anyone had a form, they would never get the "you can't submit" error, which is quite cool. Ben Lampley, is that Ben from before, one of the PubFam OG members? Let me know, because I can't see the usernames anymore. But either way, welcome to the stream. Hardening pass is green. Convex accept the latest functions. Public submissions are rate limited. And this is a big one as well, rate limiting. So it implemented rate limiting. So there actually is a very nice Convex rate limit component. So rate limit components. You can see it right here. Here it is. Convex dev components rate limit. Let's see here. So npm install convex dev / rate limiter. So basically, if the same IP address, for example, tried to spam like the same thing or the same user, you can actually decide how it works. But basically, you can say, okay, you're not allowed to submit for another 5 minutes, and then typically you have an exponential back off. So it'll be try again in 30 seconds, try again in a minute, try again in 1 hour, try again in 1 day, try again in 1 month. Like to stop them from spamming. It's like a punishment, basically, to stop that going on. Damn, I'm late. No, don't worry, dude. You're all good. We actually are giving the entire code for free in this one, so you can feel free to download the entire code from the original demo, right? So this is the build right now that's happening. So Ben from way before your Dubai days. Wow, that's crazy, dude. Welcome back, man. Good to see you. And definitely, if you haven't already been around, because I haven't seen you in a while, be sure to hit up the new community, Zero to AI Hero. Join that. Put your details in the new community. I'd love to see you in the new community, dude. But absolute OG right there. That's awesome, man. The Eve Commute production bundle completely cleaning. Okay, so now we can basically proceed to go. I think we can test ourselves. So it hasn't done the multiplayer stuff yet, but that's fine. So sign in. Let's go ahead and check. Continue with Google. Let's do sign.sanger@gmail.com. What we should see now is a prompt for setting up our organization. So sign in happens, choose organization. Cool. I'm not a huge fan of these fonts or whatnot, but let's just say PubFam is the organization. You can upload a logo if you want, otherwise click continue. And you can see, okay. So in this case, it takes us to our plans. Choose the rooms you need. We're on the current plan. So in this case, I mean, we could do it in a way where it doesn't straight away throw you here. However, in this case, if we do want to check if it works, choose starter. These right now have a small issue here. You see this? This is a common thing that tends to happen when you have the checkout flow. So we can actually go ahead and pass this over to Convex. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. If you press Command, either side of the, or Command, no, so it's either side of the spacebar. You see that little snap it did? It will go ahead and take a screenshot and throw it into this. So in this case, if I go back over here and do it now, Command, you see how it popped it in? So that's a nice little app clip, it's called. Here I can say fix the Z index, which is basically the layering of the checkout. Also, after somebody has first signed up, we could potentially go straight to creating their first basis. Showing a pricing table is a bit aggressive, right? So typically you kind of don't want to shove a pricing table in their thing, especially if they have a free plan to some degree. So we can go to our bases. Let's see if we can jump into it. So bases, okay, so it needs to there needs to be some testing here. New base, let's go ahead and say test base. Let's do, okay, create base. We have our test base, cool. Takes us into it. We can see our first fields. So we go ahead and say, for example, name, single line text, required value, yes, create field. Okay, we have our name. Let's add another field. Let's go ahead and say it was, for example, date of submission. Let's do field type. Let's do date. Required value, yes, right? So we require the name, the date of submission, and we have a couple here: status, due date, complete name. Interesting. These ones I did not add, so these I guess are coming in by default. So we could actually change those as well. And then you can see we've also got forms that are not attached yet. So a couple of things, but what I like to do, by the way, is actually have it so we have, firstly, I actually don't mind some of this, actually, to be fair. I have a demo button usually, so I can actually go ahead and mess around with a few things, but it's actually not that bad considering. If we click unlock Eve, okay, so we have gated Eve right now, the agent helper. We add a row right now. We can see, for example, if I type in Sunny, let's do Sunny, and let's do, for example, to do in progress, for example. Let's go here. Let's choose a date on complete no. And then these are just like, let's get rid of these fields, delete that field. Date of submission could be today, yeah. And then let's go and do, what's this one? And then cool. And I think that is the record done. So if we added another row, cool, yeah. So we can do that. So we can say, for example, Dave has a done progress one. So these, I don't know why they were added in initially, but we can solve that. Say that one was completed and say the data submission was done, right? Cool. Now, if I was to refresh, you can see that data is still inside the mix. So that's effectively our table at the moment, right? And we don't have drag and drop and all that stuff, so you can add that on your own. But if we go to forms, let's create a new form. This is very strange, right? It's going to find that in its own test. But if we, for example, say data collection, destination table, table 1, this is the table that we have initially, this one here. We can actually rename that table to say, for example, main master table or whatnot. And then we've got the form title. So this is a live preview here. So it's going to say data collection. We've got the name, status, response, due date, and so forth. So you can see we can actually include or get rid of these. Some of them are mandatory, so we can't actually go ahead. They're required. But in this case, for example, let's say we did not want to include the date of not date of submission, the complete, right? We don't want to include the complete. That's for us, maybe on the back end, right? The due date, let's say I didn't want to include that one as well. So in this case, I just wanted the name, status, and date of submission. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's just a hypothetical, right? And then the button was submit, right? You can say submit any, and you can see we should be able to get a preview. Yep, cool. So it's published this now, and you can see it's published. We don't yet have a link, I believe, to this one. So if we were to see, we should actually have an open public form. So it should be in a nicer place to see that. But now, if it takes us there, you can see we can actually go over here. So if I was to open this in an incognito browser, I can actually see, boom, any user can come into this and they have the data collection. Now, of course, this is heavily branded, right? It's heavily branded at the moment. So you can obviously get rid of that yourself. But in this case, if I was to type in, for example, Elon Musk, status, to do, and date of submission, let's just do, for example, tomorrow, and submit, right? Response received, cool. Again, all UI fixes that we can go ahead and work out, right? And let's say we close that now. And then let's go back over to our base, right? So where was that? Let's go back to our, not this one. Oops, what have I gone? Let's go back to our base. Go back inside of here. And you can see like Elon Musk to do with the due date, complete data submission. So you can probably have that, default values, or in this case, due date is actually for us. So we actually didn't include that. That's fine. And even here, we can have required value. If we didn't want the data submission, we could just leave that off. Okay. So I would probably add things like in default values and things like this. But overall, not bad, right? Now, Michael Davis says, clerk needs to support US currencies. Yeah, non-US currencies. So it's not a waste, by the way. So the most popular currency, if you have a SaaS, is dollar. So in this case, regardless of where you are in the world, even if I was to make a SaaS tomorrow for in Dubai, I would probably charge in dollar. So it's the easiest one that is globally well known. So if you're going to make a product, yes, you can obviously, opt in to have local currencies, but my first instinct would be you're overcomplicating the build before you even have a single customer. Validate it with dollar, which is the most known currency. And then once you've done that, you can add internationalization. You can add basically like scoped pricing per regions. By that point, Clerk will have it, right? So these are all things which they're currently working on, by the way. Now you can add different forms as well. So in this case, if I was to click on new form and just type in test form, go ahead and create, we've got a second form. Okay, so really, really nice stuff. And that one is not published. So if I was to see right now unpublished, you can see it's locked. So this is actually pretty cool, right? We've got a very, very clean setup so far, right? So of course, this is a nice base for us, right? We've got our kind of, starting base. You can customize this as much as you want. But the main thing is as well is look, one person is live right now. So we have that actually really nicely happening. We can get the invite flow down. I'm on the free plan right now, and I have 1 of 3 seats used, right? You can see billing, I'm on the free plan. If I switch plan, you can see I get up to 5 seats included on the starter plan. And I get up to 10 seats included on the next plan. Right? If I go to subscribe to the starter plan, pay with the test card, this entire pop-up, by the way, is a Clerk pre-built component, right? So we go over here now, come back. And if I went to, firstly, we unblocked Eve. So now I can ask Eve. And again, not a huge fan of this UI, so we can change that. Explain what the table tracks. Let's see if it works. Oh, okay. A valid clerk session is required. So these are a couple of teething issues which we need to figure out now. Okay. So heading back over, we can see, let's close that. Right. Agreed. The first run should lead into the product not sales decision. Check out the first run. Okay. Finishing them. So there's a couple of things now that I would go ahead and basically address. The first one is this, right? Hate that. So I'm going to screenshot that, pop that in. I'm going to say, hey, this UI looks awful. Looks awful, should be clean, should be a clean chat that slides out, right? So it could be, for example, this is number 1, boom, and I'll send that in, I interrupt it. Next one is we can go ahead and do, for example, the form, right? When we go to that visited form, so for example, the data collection form, let's go ahead and publish that one right now, open the public form. This right here, way too branded, right? For example, for these forms, we should say the actual public form page shouldn't have the header and all the branding. It should be more customizable for an organization to add in their own logo, their own branding, and so forth. We should maybe say for the free tier, it has the base craft branding. And then for the starter and pro, it removes the branding. Okay, so these are also good upsell opportunities, right? If you want to have, remove the default branding. So these should all be like additional things that are chargeable, right? So let's go ahead and steer that one in. And again, we should be committing at this point. So just word of truth, should be committing. So there's lots of push changes, way too many to be honest. So I would probably stop here, commit, and push forward. But again, the main thing right now is not hyper obsess over that. It should just be focused on getting this down. So now, another thing that was going wrong was, of course, the Eve side of things. So ask Eve, explain what this table tracks. Let's go and ask this. And again, Eve could not complete that turn. A valid clerk session is required. And what you'll also find is where it's running, we have we don't actually have an error here. So it's a front end error. Okay. So we can pop this in and we can go ahead and say, fix Eve also. go ahead and throw that in. And what you'll see is when I keep stacking these in, it's just going to spawn off a sub-agent. It'll take it, and it does it very, very well, right? So a lot of the time, what I find is people will tend to, try to go to a lower effort to save money. The problem with that, right? And this has been my honest advice and opinion here, like just from my using this stuff for so long now. If you do that, I promise you're going to get, like, I'm not saying you're getting a dumber model, but it's better to have a higher reasoning sometimes. Get to the, spend a little bit extra tokens and get to the right thing once, right? As opposed to try 5 different, weak reasoning attempts and basically burn through 5 bad approaches versus just upping the effort level once, going ahead and getting it right. It's, in my opinion, it works a lot better. I've stuck on Ultra for the longest time now because of that. So whenever I'm coding, I tend to be on Ultra a lot of the time. Okay. So now I'll create the boundary. So let's have a look at the actual main app as well over here. And we can actually see, so this one, again, this is the one that you guys have access to in the demo workspace. Let's have a look. So the analytics was a big part of it. The analytics as well. This part is actually quite a huge part, to be honest. One thing I would recommend here is probably better maybe we'll see if we can reach this point, but if we don't know that the entire thing is completely inside of the code repo that I've given you guys, so you can feel free to jump into that and ask an AI agent. What I would recommend is you literally git clone it, command I, and we can go in here. And for example, if I go to the actual code over here, which is the main GitHub repo, the one that I started the demo with, and I say, explain how the analytics work, right? Explain how the analytics work. And this is a true thing that I want to kind of teach you guys, because it's not always about being spoon-fed. Sonny, this is you got to tell us exactly how to do it. No, you need to learn how you can use AI systems to basically go into any code base, figure out how it works, scrape the goodness out of it, figure out where the bad things are happening. That's truly where you're going to benefit using these tools, right? And of course, I would use a weak model when I do this. I would not be using an expensive model, right? 1, it's way faster, and 2, it's just way cheaper, right? So in this case, like using cloud or expiration, it already done it. 5 funnel metrics: view, start, validation error, abandonment, and submission. So view is when form opened, start is when someone began filling it in, and so forth. And then based on all of those things, it basically is able to write them down. So write them into the database, and these are all basically gone ahead and crunched when it comes to our analytics side of things. All right, dedupe rows expire after 100 days via cron cleanup, aggregate count stay with the form. So yeah, this is how you can effectively go and do it. Eve uses a thinner path. Bridge AI reads form analytics, which returns the view, starts submissions, completion rate, and daily series. Okay, pretty cool. Now, that's my advice for that, right? If you are going to implement analytics on your side. Now, let's go over here. And one thing I want to do is go to localhost 3000, boom. Actually, let's do this one. I want to spin up another agent to change the landing page. And what we can do actually for the landing page is we could actually get, kind of, yeah, we could do it here, because I guess this isn't really going to break anything. We can get Claude Opus 5 to go ahead and start redesigning the landing page. Let's do redesign the landing page. Do not touch any of the work that anyone else has done or any other agent is doing on this branch. Just continue to work on the branch, but only touch the landing page. Make it a much more clean, modern, easier messaging approach, and have a clean visual design to it, right? So obviously, this is a very lazy approach at prompting here. What you could do is go into plan mode. I would go into plan, and then I would definitely go ahead and so I would go into plan here, and then start basically going back and forth with questions and so forth. And this, to be honest, doesn't need Ultra Code, so you can probably stick this on. It doesn't even need Max really, but Opus is fairly cheap compared to Fable. Well, it's half price, so in this case, it's absolutely fine for me to stick it on Max, right? And then come back. But the most important part about that prompt is continue to work on the branch, but don't touch the other stuff, right? Because sometimes it can basically go ahead and stash meaning it completely pushes the current changes aside, and that's definitely not what you want. Okay, so here we have branding entitlement. So fix missing template issue in session token retrieval. This is going to be the big one. Okay, after that it says integrate Convex present, so it's doing that. And then we have build the clerk gated Eve system of read tools and approval gated, and then run clerk Convex Eve checks, and then browser test flows, create future commit. Okay, I was there afterwards. So here we have starting to read. Now, one thing that I would say, which Cursor has an edge on over the rest, is when, for example, you see here, let me read the existing landing components and the header CTA wiring. It read files. It used Opus 5 to read files, right? When you use something like Cursor, however, for example, let's say I was in Fable 5, or let's say I was in Opus 5, or whatever the case, it will actually delegate to a sub-agent, which is typically Composer, to go ahead and do the quick stuff like the file reading. Not only is it way quicker, but it's way smarter to be able to do that, right? Because basically now you're not using a frontier model for simple things like reading a file, right? You shouldn't really be doing that. It should be a dumb model going and doing that stuff. But that's the thing that Cursor is doing better than the rest at the moment. The second that they do decide to do that, where basically it spins off sub-agents, which are, lower agents or whatever, you can actually get it to do that if you force it, and you basically say all sub-agents should use this and use that and so forth. However, that's the case, right? Oh, this is why. Move to port 3001. Okay. Restarting on this process is port. Okay, I see. Restarting only this project's port 3000. That's why. It was because it was on 3000. I got you. All right. So it wasn't working because of the 3000. Because we actually have the old app running on the 3001. 3000, sorry. Yeah. So at this point now, we're going to have a water break because I'm super thirsty. Okay. Found field type validated definition. And you see, like, all of this again is just to get discovery, right? So, and already it's at 105k tokens. So for me personally, GPT is taking a huge lead here, and this is why I tend to be a fan of being on one chat now, and running way far forward with it, as opposed to having several chats across different coding harnesses. And that's why I've been a huge fan, more so, of GPT over Claude. So let me know what you guys think as well, and what you have been focusing on. But once we have the Eve gateway down, I believe we might actually be pretty good on the covering side, because the main focus today was going to be the bases, getting this down, and then getting the forms into the bases, which is awesome, which is exactly what we have here as the base, and then actually getting an agent to be able to interact with it. So in this case, very shortly, we should be able to get that up. So both code and corrected. I'm restarting on this one. Okay, validated fixed. So I believe it killed the old one. Let's see. All right. So explain which table tracks. Yeah, there you go. AI gateway received no credentials. Okay. So in this case, that's interesting. So no creds error. And that is likely, and I can't show you my environment local file now because I believe it's in there. So I'm going to pop my environment file out for a second. Let's have a look. Yeah, so right now I can show you this. There is no Vercel OIDCP, I think it's called, token, right? So this is there needs to be a gateway token here for Vercel gateway, right? Right now there is no gateway token, which means that there's an absolute reason why it wouldn't work right now. Right, so right now there's actually no Vercel project, because remember, Vercel Eve is actually running off of Vercel. So we actually need to go ahead and get that done. So what I'm going to do here is go to Vercel, and typically what we can do is I'm just going to open up my projects from scratch. And here we can see it has actually base. This is the one that I demoed yesterday, or I completed yesterday, right? But we need to actually create a new project, right? And it needs to basically go ahead and and the reason why we want to do it, we want to push this to GitHub, create a Vercel project, connect the two. And then what we do is we use the Vercel CLI to get something called an OIDC token. And what that does is it basically, rather than us coming here, creating an API key, going ahead and using that, now we can go ahead and basically instead simply get a secure key purely from the CLI, right? So no local credential. I'm using the Vercel AI gateway guidance on how to get the project supported local credential. So at this point, it's going to basically be saying, yeah, OIDC token. Yep, there you go. So in this case, it checked who it was logged into. And now it's basically going to go ahead and yep, so it knows who it is, what account it's on. Now it's going to create a command, which is going to go ahead and it's listing out all the projects. It's going to create that project. See, it's spot on, right? So it found all the old projects and then it's going to go ahead and get it set up for us. Right? I could even say here, push to GitHub and configure via GitHub plus Vercel. Right? Push to GitHub and configure via GitHub and Vercel to make a new, I could say to make a new project, but either way, that's how you do it. Designing, secure environment, variable merging. So it's basically going to go in that Vercel link. Yes, project-based craft in 2 seconds. So it's actually doing it off the old project base craft. I'll take this to the full delivery, preserve the newly pulled OIDC credential, finish the form, create, reuse the correct GitHub repo, connect the existing basecraft, the cell project to it, configure non-secret and secret environment variables without printing them. So the good thing about the CLIs now is it literally will go ahead and set this up for you. So it'll set up the environment variables, and the same thing with Clerk. Literally Codex will handle it. Yep, so JNate is spot on. Codex handles that entire thing for you now, which is way nicer, right? Deploy the Convex production backend if required, then verify the resulting Vercel deployment. Cool. So because of that, we should actually have a key. So I'm not going to show that one. Let's see. Yeah, so I actually have an OIDC token right now. So let me see if I can show you. So I can show you this bit. You can see there is now a Vercel OIDC. That's not the entire token. I've cut it out on purpose, right? So I'm going to close my thing now so you guys can't see that. And then I'm going to make that smaller. There we go. Okay. Now waiting for the live base to reconnect. Now we should actually be able to localhost 3000. Let's do 3001. I gave Codex access to Cloudflare via API and just watched it deploy and work till it got me a full fix. Yeah, again, it's okay to do, provided if you want to be really careful, especially when you talk from dev environments to production environments. In production environments, it just takes one mistake for like, oh, I just changed the DNS record in your Cloudflare settings and boom, the whole thing's down. Like, so you really want to be careful on that side of things. Also, this is Claude's Opus at work. So you see, look, I went ahead and actually done a couple of changes to give us this new landing page, a shared table that collects its own data. Nice, okay. So we got the stage, owner, due, fill. This is cool. 3 steps from blank page to work and build the table, share as a form, work the records. That's cool. So in this case, it's much cleaner messaging. Prod is all manual. Yeah, exactly. JNate 100% the way to go. Right? This is way simpler for someone to understand. Build a table, share as a form, work the record. Right? The form and the table are the same thing. Right? So the form pushes into a table. Right? Way better messaging. Right? Every column knows what it holds. So in this case, it supports different types, and then we got start free, upgrade when your team needs more. This is way more straight to the point. Of course, you can have animations, you can do everything else, but yeah, for teams that outgrew the spreadsheet, right? So kind of cool. But I would probably focus around like, you know, the form sharing aspect and all that side of things. But mainly this is around kind of just demonstrating agent usage for this kind of thing, right? Now let's give it a try. So ask Eve, explain what this table tracks. Eve is working with the live table. Let's have a look. Inspect table is running. It's complete. Nice. So we can see the tool calls. And then boom. Hey, look at that. That was awesome. It streamed in. Right? The table appears to track a small set of work items. Okay. So in this case, let's say add 10 dummy records. Okay. Let's see if we can do that. This little kind of, you know, progress indicator is a bit weird at the moment. We can probably change that. Create record approval. Hey, look at that. We have a human in the loop. Nice. Okay. So add 1 dummy record named dummy1 with placeholder task fields. Let's say yes. So in this case, let's create record, right? So is it going to try and do every single one? I wonder. Yeah, like it's going to do an approval for every single one, right? So this is the thing here. So firstly, the approved tool call, you can actually style this if you wanted to, if you need to, based on what the contents are here. But in this case, if I was to say, I can screenshot this. What I'd recommend is, or app clip it, come back over here, do that again. And then I can basically go ahead and say, add a plural tool, So we, So, oh, okay, that was GitHub credential was expired. Oh, okay, so I didn't realize. Add a plural tool so we can, it looks more like Shopify Sidekick. Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? Add a plural tool so we can add multiple records at once. So we can edit / add multiple records at once. Okay, and then the GitHub, what's it called? GitHub credential expired. Try GitHub again. Try GitHub credential pop up again. And then another thing that I like about Codex is even when I push it in, it doesn't interrupt the chat. It tends to just, it throws it in, but it doesn't like forget about what it was working on. And like Claude Code can be a bit more aggressive with that. I relaunched GitHub device authentication authorization and surface a fresh browser prompt. So in a moment, we'll get a GitHub pop-up and then we can go ahead and get that down. So what I'm going to do here is open it up in my personal. And now I'm going to authorize it. And then we need our key. So use code. Boop. And to be honest, I shouldn't have shown that, but it's fine. I'm going to authorize that now. And then I'm authorizing it. And I'm using my passkey. And then I'm popping it in. Yep, steering capabilities, GPT-5 models is clean. Yes, so clean. And there we have it. So device is all set. Boom, go back. And then it's done, right? And what I like to do is just sometimes done GitHub auth. It just saves it, the check. As opposed to, I'm reaffirming a refresh GitHub session. I'll create the private repo after batch tools and release checks are committed. Let's just say make it public and call it, say base, what's it called? Basecraft. Call it Basecraft YouTube demo. YouTube Basecraft YouTube demo. The steering capabilities are way better on GPT 5.6, yeah. Understood. GitHub repo could be public and named Basecraft YouTube. I'm making it public so you guys can feel free to check it out as well. And then once we get that down, I think we're pretty golden. But you can see here that tool calls are really nice. They're working. And then I can even go ahead and I can actually say something at this point. I can be like, can you add all at once? Right. So if I was to say that instead, right. So I didn't answer its question. I just threw that in the mix. Let's see if it can do that. So I believe it's thinking here. Let's see. So I think if we send the message, it's still waiting here. So if I was to say no, then it pushes in the question. So we can improve that, right? So in this case, it's one demo record, but the next, right? Do you want me to continue adding the remaining demo? No, stop here. So firstly, even that was quite clever, right? And you can see like here. So when it's thinking, so say when Eve is thinking, there is a weird empty bubble. Okay, let's throw that in the mix. And again, the whole point that I'm trying to highlight here is you can feel free to obviously add features on. That's the reason why now I'm giving the entire code base from the start. But the main thing here is just from, let's have a look at our usage. Just from some smart planning, some smart usage, we now are at 84%. So it took us 12% of a weekly limit on fast mode, which means it would have been effectively half. So 6%, 7% of a weekly max 20%, 20 times limit, right? So the full max plan. So 6-7% to get to effectively an entire base app, right? So in this case, an entire, like, you could actually go ahead and start this off. It has, absolute billing. This is a bit of a strange one, but when it's loading things like that, you can go ahead and do it, but really incredible, right? The Myth One Legend said that's very good. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah. It blows me away how good that is. Even here, right? If we have a look, let's take a look at what it did behind the scenes. It enabled organization billing. It set up the subscription plans. The organization was correctly billed. So in this case, 0 to full stack. Okay, interesting. I didn't create that. Did it create that on its own? Did it seed the data on its own? Let's see, members, Basecraft clerk test. Yeah, this was literally the Codex testing based on what I have. Starter free, payments, and you can see the settings for that exact one, like admin row. If you want to do specific rows, it's easy as just asking it to do it, or it has full skill set to do that. But if we go over to the actual billing side, you can actually see here, look at that, boom, 2 active billings. Amazing, right? So in this case, we can go ahead and we can actually see, even in the logs, I think, this one overview. Few changes on clerk side that I've noticed. If we go here, columns, if we were to dive into this billing, which is $29 a month, they do have typically a really nice kind of visual overlay of all of your billing sort of profiles and how much you're making and so forth. But in this case, the main thing is we can see how much, all the renewals and how much is coming in. Okay. Now the empty bubble came from assistant messages that contain only hidden reasoning or step markers. I've removed those shows messages entirely while keeping the explicit spinner status line. Then and batch write approvals now render as write actions too. Right. So now we've got batch approvals. So if we go over here, you can see it would have created a new tool. And this is what I really like. Like, it's straightforward to navigate this stuff. Like if we go to tools, create records, right? Simple. This can handle multiple records. Automatically create 2 to 50 records in one table belonging to a verified organization. Nice. So now if we go back to our build, let's go ahead and give it a try. Bases, open base. Let's go ahead and ask Eve. I'm gonna say add 10 dummy records. Records with realistic info. And while that's happening, I want to check one thing. I want to go to create records, inspect, update records, cell, update records, records, cell, update. Maybe like even adding columns would be really handy, that kind of thing. But in this case, the inspect table to do, it's actually set to do, right? Eve is working with the live table. And now, like, because it's all real time, in the back, we should actually start seeing something happen. So like if we pop, oh no, damn it. Okay, so interesting. If I closed it actually completely, but I think it's still working behind the scenes. So I can check if it's actually doing anything behind the scenes. So if we close it, you see how, okay, so firstly it's not running. So that's interesting. Oh, it's probably running through this. So sometimes this can actually spin up the, yeah, look, this is running. So most likely that's running. So yeah, we need to have it, of course, be accounting for that. If somebody closes it, they should be able to see the old chats, resume chats, and so forth. But in this case, let's let it do its testing. Right, so it's doing a bit of batch testing. But let's actually give it a try ourselves. Let's do it again. So add 10 dummy records with realistic info. And again, doesn't need to be spelled right. It's got good fuzzy context. Now, the main thing is though, tool calling is in the mix. Banging, inspect table, running, done. And then, so it's basically got the contents of the table, and now it will come up with the records and it will pass that into, and it knows which tool to use as well because of the descriptions, right? So of course here we got to create records, automatically create 2. So it knows to call this one because it needs to create 10 new records, right? So likely what has happened though is this is going ahead and killing the backend therefore. I reckon it is doing that. As we create records, approval represented both records and denying it made no changes. Okay, nice. Yeah, look at this. Like it created the records. Let's do that. Approve. So we had human. Look at that. Awesome. Right? Really, really nice. Done. I added 10 dummy records. If you want, I can add another batch with different naming themes, update some records to look more like customer leads projects, or inspect the table. Got it. I have the current selection. So what would you like me to do with next for this table? Nice. Awesome stuff. Okay, what is that one? That's new chat. Okay. So there we have it. Like perfectly interacting. Of course, like it's just kind of like it just added some dummy information right now. So you see how we can actually create, and the whole point of this is that you can start to understand how you can build your agents, how you can do things accordingly, how the skills come into the mix, how the plugins come into the mix, the actual efficiency behind this. Like surely after today, you can clearly see that I've been on fast mode, ultra, 560, literally maxing out as much parallel work as possible, and we've only used essentially like barely 10% of my weekly, right? Or I think it was 12% of my weekly, right? So if it wasn't on fast mode, it'd be under 7% for an entire base of an app that has billing, authentication, B2B, invite flows, everything. And this is my biggest learning point that I can possibly stress to you guys. If you want to build a app, stop spending weeks and weeks, whether you vibe coded it, whether you're a coder before and you're using AI to help you out, whatever it is, stop building the bits that no one cares about. Use stuff like Clerk, use stuff like Convex, get an MVP out, get billing and all that set up as quick as possible, build a useful product, and focus on getting customers to actually sign up and use the thing. If you can nail that, every single other thing, when people argue about this is more efficient and this is more blah, 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 and this database is better than that, and you can self-host, you can do that all when you have users, and it's very easy to migrate. I promise you that. But it's going to be the biggest waste of time setting all of that up and not having a single user that will even appreciate it. So this is why I always stress to go ahead and use things like Clerk, because they're absolute game changers and killers in the space when it comes to this. Like the fact that the agent can set up the entire authentication, the entire billing flow, all from one place. It's what I would 100% do every single time over. Thank you so much, the myth, the one legend. He says very good advice. I appreciate it. Public form now also fails closed against Clerk's current subscription library request. If a team downgrades, save while label settings stop applying immediately. Its browser title is now neutral as well. I'm moving to the final build and deployment checks now. So you see how it really is quite nice on how it's doing the testing. It's really in depth, going and testing the hell out of everything, right? And what I'll be honest with you, what I actually do a lot of the time is I tend to give a ton of tasks and I will literally go to sleep and I will come back in the morning and bam, loads of stuff is done. I pair this with Linear a ton. So Linear is amazing for this as well. So even Notion now actually has a mad good agent ecosystem behind it as well. And we use Notion a lot inside the Papa Fam. So if you're wondering as well on how to do that, then I would really recommend that you go ahead and again, join our community, Zero to AI Hero. I'm going to be teaching everything I know inside that community. So that's going to be my absolute golden place to just talk all this stuff as long as I can talk about it. Because I use this stuff day in, day out, and it's honestly life-changing. Okay, code checks are clean. TypeScript, Eve, diagnostics, Cloud Doctor, and the Convex one-shot deployment all pass. Production build is in Next.js optimized. I'm watching it rather than treating the earlier checks as a substitute. Cool. Now, the next step is when you come to deploy, I'll show you what you should do when it comes to deploy. The production build caught one real app router issue is that dev mode doesn't say four suspicious users use search params without a suspense boundary. I'm fixing that route and rerunning the build. The alternative Webpack build gave us a precise failure instead of the stored TurboPack process. And these are probably some of the most valuable bits of testing because most of the time it works on my machine. I built it with some kind of, vibe prompting thing or whatever. It's not the same as going to production. There's a big difference in those two things. Show Dev says, why do you keep prompting in the same session? Better to create a new session for each job? No, this is not actually the case. So this is the thing that again is a confused kind of topic that I'd love to address. Number one, every time you start a new chat, you have to start from zero context, which means the agent has no idea what's going on. It has to now read everything, figure everything out, and so forth, right? Not good. So with GPT-5.6 Ultra or GPT-5.6 Sol, I believe the context window is 250K or 300K and when we're using Codex. I think you can push it to a mil, but I think where we're using it here is 250, 300K, which is actually not bad at all, right? So you'll notice throughout this point, it's been doing a lot of compacting. So you'll see it happen a lot. So every time it hits around 300K, it's going to compact. And it would have happened fairly recently. It would hit context automatically compacted, right? So that doesn't mean that it keeps all of the previous information. That means that it's basically compacting, which yes, means that it can get fuzzy with some of the old stuff. So I would always add in like certain rules, basically, that make it go check that file itself before just guessing that it knew what it was talking about. But GPT-5.6 does a very good job with making sure that your context window doesn't fly out of place. Now, this applies, however, if you have a million context window size, which means if you've got like 900,000 tokens, and now I'm doing stuff which is totally unrelated to anything that we've done so far, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that is where I'd recommend, again, everything we've done so far has been fundamental. So what I'd call it like foundation building. It's been adding the tables, adding the forms, adding Eve. All of this stuff is responsible for, like, if the schema changed, all of these would change. So once the foundation stuff is built, cool. Once we commit this stuff, the next step would be, I can code in Codex, Cursor, Claude Code in different Git work trees or in complete separate cloud agents and submit PRs. And that is absolutely fine. Yeah, we absolutely should be having new chats per feature. But when we're doing like a big chunk of work like this, where there's a lot of testing, there's a lot of things, think about it this way. The easiest way to solve your question in one go, if I need to test every single part of all of the stuff that we've added right now, if I did that in new chats, you can see the clear context gap. All right, the new agent is not gonna cover all the testing grounds. It's not gonna have an idea on what to do completely and fully. In this case, we have the plan. We have all the previous sub-agents that did every bit of work. We even have these longer working agents that constantly get woken up from idle states. And also, every single sub-agent, the context window is started from scratch, right? So basically, you can just give it a summary of only what it needs to know, so then it can continue to work. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm no longer on the lines of having 5-10 different chats. However, once I'm past the fundamental stage or the foundation stage of an app, 100%. Like if I'm working on 3 different things, like recently in an app I'm building, I had like 3 totally different features that I'm working on. Yep, I'll have 3 different chats. Like cool, 3 different chats, but they'll all be on different Git work trees. And then I'll basically remote from my phone. And that way, if I'm out and about, if I'm at the gym and I'm on the treadmill, I can literally just sit there and kind of just be like, okay, this agent's doing this agent's doing that. And I can check from my phone what's going on. And that's why even now you're seeing a lot more iPad support, phone support, all of that stuff, because all of this is becoming a lot more mobile. You can literally just tap in. I typically have my laptop like running most of the time and I have a Mac Mini that's permanently on. So really can get dialed in with this stuff, honestly, and the setup can get really, really crazy. It's awesome. Like it's never been a better time to be a dev, quite honestly. Because if you've got ambition behind it, you can do madness in this space right now. Okay, so it's built. I made the build. Okay. Okay, suspense fix, which is safer for the Vercel Git build 2. Nice, right? So now it's going to do Eve allowed origins in the production. It's basically whitelisting that. Cool. And then, of course, now when it comes to deployment, I'm going to show you the steps because you can very easily do this on your own now. You go to the plugins, add the Vercel plugin, click install, authenticate your account. It will pop up. And now this has all the skills to basically be able to understand how to deploy it to Vercel, set the environment variables, all of that stuff. Ours has already actually done a big element of that. Now, the next thing as well is once you've done that, I'd highly recommend you actually use the clerk CLI heavily on this part, right? So clerk CLI as well as the Convex CLI. So notice how in the clerk CLI, we actually had a step here called deploy, right? Ship your auth to production from the CLI. Clerk helps you set up your domain or auth providers and DNS records with confidence. And if your DNS records tend to be on biggest advice when it comes to deployments of web apps, if you have a domain provider, for example, GoDaddy or any of these other ones, I tend to basically control the traffic through Cloudflare. So I tend to give ownership of all the DNS and management over to Cloudflare because Cloudflare has a lot of reasons which make it a great service, right? It basically stops bots attacking the site. It can, handle a lot of stuff. Now, and that's only on the free tier is enough, by the way, for a lot of people, most of you out there, especially with MVPs. Now, the good thing about Cloudflare is you have an MCP and you can also basically get your agent to tap into Cloudflare CLI. So now your agent can modify your DNS records, handle your clerk config, handle your Convex config, handle your Vercel deployment config. It can literally take you from every single point from A to Z to go from dev to production. And that is an absolute game changer. And you can see here, say for example, clerk deploy said, you need to add these CNAME records, right? Then if my agent has access to Cloudflare, it can then go to Cloudflare and add those CNAME records for me. And then it can say, yep, I've added that. It's now propagating. And trust me, it just gets wilder and wilder and wilder. Like I've got so many complex workflows that run. It's absolutely awesome. I even have apps that every time I basically push to a certain branch, spins up a build on the Mac Mini totally independent using a GitHub worker, and then pings over to my phone through by an over-the-air update. It's crazy what you can do now. We will cover that actually in an upcoming Expo build. Right, the feature commit is now public. So we've got Sunny Sanga Basecraft YouTube demo. So this is now on my GitHub. You can feel free to check that out. That push has triggered the linked Vercel production pipeline. So that way it will go through in just a sec, right? And of course, I'm actually going to be careful about putting that up because I don't want to have that being hit against too much with the keys and whatnot, especially while it's in demo credentials. Right now, we don't want that to go to production. But the main takeaway for this is let's go ahead and actually spin up our localhost 3000. Let's see, what's this one? OIDC for Eve. This environment is already put in Convex and uses Up Vercel. I'm waiting for the final build status and alias before locking the origin allow list. Cool. And if you're wondering what this is, the Vercel OIDC token, again, if you're already authenticated on a CLI, right, it means that you are a trusted, connected user or entity for the CLI, right? So that way, for example, if I'm already authenticated on the terminal for Vercel, then I'm a trusted person on my Vercel account. So because of that, I can basically generate this OIDC key instead of going to the dashboard, creating a new key, making sure no one sees it, my agent doesn't see it. I can just use the CLI to generate the key and basically just put it in for me. It's a safer way of working with things, and that's why Vercel are moving in that approach as well, right? Okay, so let's have a look at also, we should actually have Convex. Yeah, look, Convex, our tables are now in play as well. We can actually see as well, deployment is online. Let's have a look. Let's go back in. Then we can see if we go to our, look, there's a lot of the fields that we added. If we go to our functions, we can actually see that we've got presence function. So this one is for when we can detect who's in that room. And then we've got presence or batch worker as well. So let's test out the multiplayer aspect, right? So 3001. Oh, okay, so let's run it. So we do pm dev. And now this will spin up on 3001. So 3001, let's go ahead and take it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a separate profile, go into 3001. So in this case, I'm going to invite this user. So these are two different users right now, okay? I'm going to go ahead and invite. So let's go to invite. Let's go to team, papareact.com. I'm going to invite this person as a member instead of an admin. Send the invite, okay? Now the next step is I will get an email, right? So in a moment, I'll get an email. I'll sign in to that account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my email right now. And then what I'm going to see is in a moment, I should get a email. So I just need to quickly log in. One second. And what we can see here is prime example. I can see that I've got an invitation. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click on accept invitation. And now that is taking me to a sign up page. And you can see here, I'm now on a sign up page, fill in the missing fields. I can connect with my Google account. So I can just go ahead and log in with my Google account. And then I'm signing in. And then what we should see in 1 second is, okay, then we see this page. That's because I haven't deployed yet. So it's the default redirect, okay? But to test it out properly now, what I do is I close everything. And then we go here and we can see now that if I go over to manage, we can actually go to members and we can see now there's 2 members because I accepted it. So if I sign in as this user now, this is how you do the test flow, team at papareact, right? Let's go ahead and I need to log in quickly, right? Give me 1 second and I will do that. So I'm going to quickly log in now. So 1 minute. I've changed my password, so I need to quickly do that. Let me go ahead and do one quick other way. And then what we should be able to see is some presence, which is basically the multiplayer aspect of this. Okay. So now I'm inside and I can see, look, choose an organization, PapaFam, right? So now we've got the multi-tenancy. Boom. Now this user is logged in to this organization. So this user can see it, this user can see it, right? as Sunny, I'm going to go over here and let's just assume this is the company account. So that one person is live, right? I go into the base. Okay. Look, 2 people are live, right? Amazing. And this is probably my ID, right? So II5G is probably that. And that's probably my ID for this one. So we could just change that to be the first name or whatever, last name, or just the initials. But in this case, that's awesome. So now if I was to go into, for example, training deck updates 1, 2, 3, if I go over here and you can see, look, this is all real-time updating. So if I go over here, watch this one here. If I go to in progress, boom, everything is real-time. Nice, right? And if I go and change one more thing, boom, everything works. Really, really clean. So 2 people now can come in, start modifying things. If I was to tick this box over here, you can see that one changes over there, right? If I was to add a field in, so let's go ahead and say, for example, test 2, single line field, let's just say it was a file, and let's go create field. You see that file just popped in right here. Boom, simple as that. If I was to delete this record now, delete test, boom, it's gone. We have presence indicators with real-time functionality. Same applies for the forms, I believe. So for forms, if we go to test form 1, 2, 3, boom. Yep, everything by default real time. So just like that, we have multiplayer as well. So we not only have we got an entire flow, and also, by the way, remember roles and permissions. So this user is a user, it's not an admin, right? So if I go over here, right now you can see billing. So this user can see, so they can actually switch. You do not have permissions to manage billing, right? So right now they can view billing, but they can't change it. You see how they can't change the planning, the payment methods, manage it all, but you can actually go ahead and hide a lot of these things. Whereas this, and then you see how a member cannot invite another person, right? Whereas here, if I wanted to go ahead and basically now change it to an admin, so I've changed that person to an admin. And if we were to go ahead and say, for example, next time they refresh and they come back, and let's say they wanted to now try, go manage members, boom, now they can invite. Now they can also manage the payment flow. So that is known as role-based access control, which is part of Clerk, right? So all of that, again, powered by Clerk. We didn't have to build it from scratch, and now you guys can use it as well, right? And both Eves right here can work independently. So again, these are 2 separate Eves chats. So in this case, I can be like, okay, find missing data gaps and also explain what this table means. So now we have 2 independent Eve chats going on, and you can see they're both running absolutely fine. And this is all happening locally as well. So it's used our Vercel key to go ahead and do it, Vercel AI gateway. But in this case, you can see like both chats working. We've shown the human in loop side of things as well. And there you go, guys. Absolutely awesome. We've got tool calls, human in the loop element. Amazing. All right. So to wrap up, I think what we're going to do is this is now gone ahead and done a little build. So it's gone ahead and done that. I'm going to go ahead and actually stop that one and kill that one afterwards. But because I don't want it to be used online. But either way, if you want to get this build, this has been deployed. So not deployed, sorry. This has been pushed on GitHub. So you can actually get this right now if you wanted to. And then if you wanted to get the original build, which is the one which has all of the functionality of everything that we talked about in the beginning, this one right here, you can also get this. The link is in the description down below. And then you can go ahead and grab that one. So this, of course, is going to be the one that I'd recommend you go ahead. The first one I'd recommend you build with me, alongside me, if you were doing it at home, to go ahead and understand the concepts, the fundamentals of how you can even begin to go ahead and get, for example, a table inside, get the forms inside, get the whole thing connected, and then implement Eve to go ahead and have tools to go ahead and basically interact with that data, right? So that's the first thing. And again, not only that, set up multi-tenancy, the B2B side, the billing, the authentication, all again powered by Clerk, right? So remember, if you do sign up through Clerk, again, use the first link in the description. It helps me out a ton, and I appreciate that, guys, because it allows me to do all of these videos for you guys over and over again, okay? So go ahead, sign up. Remember, set up the CLI. It's going to be your best friend. And of course, if you're watching a replay of this, let me know down below what you found most helpful, so that way I can go ahead and improve the next time as well, right? And remember, as I said, guys, before, the entire build is available in the GitHub, right? So in my GitHub, the link down below is completely free to go ahead and get set up. And again, if you haven't already, join Zero to AI Hero, our community. We're going to be launching and opening the doors very, very shortly. As always, guys, it's your boy Sunny. This is the final demo. I want to go ahead and show you guys. This is the demo I showed initially in the beginning, which you guys have full access to. So feel free to go ahead and grab it, play with it, learn from it. And of course, I will see you in the next video. It's your boy. And yeah, peace.